I hope for everyone that turns up to participate and relax with me on a Thursday night in the vPub kind of pursues this whole, I'm often reluctant to call it a hobby, but it's a hobby. Let's just call it a hobby, this whiskey pursuit, this flavour pursuit, this love of single malt or whatever your style of whiskey is. I wonder for if you would agree with me that it's something that should always be fun. The reason that we're here on a Thursday night is because we're having fun. We're having fun with whiskey. Well, it also means that we kind of have opinions and we start to have quite experienced opinions. And we have to be careful, and I have to be careful, that we don't drag it a wee bit too far towards negativity. I'll never stop critiquing or calling things out when they deserve to be critiqued or called out or whatever it is from our perspective, from my perspective as an enthusiast. But occasionally, I think it's nice just to celebrate the good stuff that we've got around us, to keep it positive and really remember how fun this privilege is. I'm looking forward to tonight, sharing some Happy Drams, and I'll see you in a second. Hello, whiskey folk. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the vPub. Welcome to another Thursday night. I hope you're all doing very well. Anybody watching the football? Any folk from Poland in tonight? Well done, Poland. Congratulations. No, Ben, Whiskey with Molly. I wasn't late. I made sure I was pretty much on time, despite the fact that the football was running on a wee bit. You never know. Something might happen in a few minutes after that penalty there. But you can tell me about it in the chat. I'm here to hang out with you, and I'm here to talk about whiskey, our love of whiskey, how fantastic a thing it is, and specifically focus on some drams that for me has brought me joy, has made me happy. They have made me happy. These are whiskies that I've kind of picked up over the summer months, maybe one or two before summer, one or two very recently, things that I've opened and I've just decided, you know what, this is fantastic. This is good. And I think we need that, and we need to fortify those kind of positive vibes every now and again, because there are things happening in whiskey constantly in the background that kind of make us just kind of shrug our shoulders and kind of go a wee bit narrow in the eyes and furrow our brows a bit too much and get a wee bit caught up in the fact that what are these people thinking about? What are these companies thinking about? It's happening a lot. And as if I needed any more fuel for the fire, along came Louis Vuitton Moët Hennessy. Ardbeg came along with an announcement this week. It's just absolutely hilarious and utterly tone deaf. I'm going to talk about that a wee bit later. I'm going to bring it up. But that'll be hopefully the only kind of pocket of this evening that I'm going to allow myself to fall into a negative perspective. I think it needs to be talked about. It needs to be talked about quite loudly. But then we'll just get on with talking about lots and lots of happy things. I'm going to break down tonight by splitting up into things that make me happy because of renewal or renaissance. It's happening right in front of our eyes right now in whiskey. I'm going to give an example, maybe one or two examples for that. I'm going to give one or two examples for things that bring things that are new things, new flavors, brand new things that did not exist before, things that make us excited and make us happy, and things that tend to do things right as well. Then I'll move on to things that bring cracking value. Of course, it's constantly going to be a theme. It's nothing that we can really hide from. There are people out there that don't really care, that are happy to pay lots of money on whatever the latest and greatest thing is. But for the majority of us, we've got to be very, very careful because, well, this is a pursuit, a hobby, whatever you want to call it. It can be expensive from time to time, right? So we have to kind of keep an eye on value all the time. So I'll spend a wee bit of time sharing some examples of just where I'm holding a bottle in my hand and saying, how is this existing? This is fantastic. And by the way, there is some overlap with these categories as well, which is really cool. And then right at the end, I'm going to save till the end two surprises for me, two big surprises. One I decided was a wee bit too expensive, but now that I have a time to actually sit with it and process it, I've decided this is just a great whiskey and we should celebrate it despite some other things going on. And then at the end, I'm going to share with you what's in this wee bottle here. The reason I'm starting with this whiskey and finishing with this whiskey is that on Tuesday night, when I was picking the final bottles that I was going to put forward for tonight's vPub, that's exactly what I did. I started with this, believing it to be light and easy and bright. Really fell in love with it very quickly. I'd had one or two before that, but I really fell in love with it Tuesday night. And then at the end of the night, I poured another one because it's the one that I couldn't get out of my head, right on the back of a big, heavily peated whiskey. Actually, the heavily peated one I'll be sharing with you tonight. And even at the end of the night, this supposedly light, little, easygoing whiskey cut right through everything. I loved it. So I'll share with you what that is tonight as well. And I think it's still available out there. Yes, I'm pretty certain it is. In fact, I know that Good Spirits Company had some today. I was in today picking up another bottle and they had some on the shelf. So this stuff is still about and it's less than 50 quid a bottle. So cheers, everyone, and welcome. I hope you're looking forward to tonight. I hope you're relaxed. I hope you get your feet up and I hope you get something in the glass. Cheers. And if you haven't, worry not. There will be a dram waiting for you soon. Hopefully it's a happy dram that makes you happy. And if you're picking this up on the replay, like so many of you do, thank you for picking it up on the replay. I really do appreciate it. Remember to leave a wee like if you find yourself at any point during the evening understanding what I'm actually getting at or enjoying what we're talking about or just enjoying the fantastic people that turn up every Thursday night to hang out with us together. So that's the focus tonight, focused on positivity, me sharing whiskies with you that I love. Quick caveat. I have been very, very mindful in the vPub of FOMO, of not purposefully trying to sell or promote whiskey. I'll never, ever do that. Not to generate FOMO, not to kind of get into everybody chasing bottles or anything like that. It's simply using bottles that we're enjoying. And if an incidental of celebrating something that is good or done well ends up generating a demand for that in some pockets, it's not much. Come on, let's be honest. If it ends up happening, it's an incidental thing. It's just going to happen. And I've realized that I'm maybe restricting myself a little bit because I'm kind of caveating things all the time, second guessing things, and being a wee bit mindful of creating FOMO when it's actually worse than mindfulness. It's actually just worrying about something. You're adults. You're all grown-up people. You know when you've spent too much money on whiskey and there's not going to be any more whiskey this month. And you know when you've got a wee bit extra money and you're kind of bored, you're looking about, looking for inspiration for something to pick up. And that's when these kind of vPubs can hopefully be a bit helpful. That being said, I do need to just remind everyone, everything I share with you tonight I've paid for with my own money. That's the way it always is on the vPub. And everything I share with you tonight and speak positively about, I am recommending not just to you as you tune in here, but I would recommend to my best friends, my family, my closest whiskey pals, whatever it may be, with confidence. And I would like to think that they would kind of back me up and say, do you know what, this is a good dram. Anyway, that being said, let's do what we always do to kick things off. Let's jump into the lounge and welcome some of you beautiful whiskey folk and dedicated barflies. Cheers, everyone. Good stuff. Fantastic to see so many of you, and as always, early. Love the support. Thank you. Let's scroll back a wee bit and catch Pedro. Pedro Meneses from Brazil. He's saying, good evening, Barflies. Good evening, Aquavite. Good to see you, buddy. And Ryan Sutherland from way up north at 8 Doors Distillery is here saying, evening, Roy. It's been a while for me, but glad to be here, Ryan. I don't care how long it's been, fella. I'm glad to have you back again. And it's wonderful to see your name in here. I hope things are going well for you up at the distillery. Klitz is saying, good evening, Roy. Looking forward to tonight. Thompson Brothers North Highland Blend and Ardnamurchan English poured. Nice when both a bottle and the liquid inside makes me smile. That's perfect, Klitz. That's exactly what I'm trying to get to. And you might find Thompson Brothers and Ardnamurchan both getting a mention tonight. Doodle the Dram, good to see you, Arnie. How are you keeping? He's saying, wonderful, uplifting topic. Happy having been baked in 35-degree heat in Germany. Oh, come on, really. All day, I opened up Glencadam Tawny Port tonight. Wrong choice. It tastes just as sticky as I've felt all day. Yeah, you need something with a wee bit of sizzle, a wee bit fresh, a wee bit of brightness about it during summertime. And maybe start, Arnie, with maybe a tall, refreshing drink. How about grabbing something that you can mix and refresh before you go into the neat single malts. Good to have you, fella. Jean Kelly saying greetings, Roy and Barflies. Looking forward to opening my eyes and lips to what's new and worthy of purchase. It's a challenging landscape. Yeah, I'll be careful. I don't think there's anything here that's been around for too long. Well, there will be at least one or two that's well known and well established. I'm not going to dwell on them. I'm not going to pour them, uncork them, or anything like that. I'm just going to mention them because when we're talking about all of these new things that come along, we need to remember that there are stalwarts out there that have been bringing us fantastic, cracking whiskies at decent prices for a long, long time. And just because they're ubiquitous and spoken about doesn't mean that we should stop speaking about them. Gene, it's great to have you in, buddy. And it is indeed a challenging landscape. That's why it's so good to be part of a community like ours, where we can navigate it together. Again, I'm all good to see you, buddy. Saying evening, Roy. I'm looking forward to welcoming you here in Glasgow at the end of the month, James. I should probably mention that as well, of course, on the 28th of September, a Saturday night at the end of this month, we're all going to gather in the Bon Accord and just get together to have a very informal Barflies gathering. We've had a couple of these in the past, and they've always been fantastic nights. I'm going to get together with one or two others and arrange a dinner before we do that as well. So, of course, I'll announce it on here too as we run up to the event, but patrons will hear about it first. Of course, they will. I don't know whether to ticket it. I tell you what, it'll depend on how many people I can get in the restaurant, and based on that, we'll decide whether it has to be ticketed. I would rather keep these things quite informal and loose. Can't wait. Looking forward to getting everybody together again. Jimmy Jazz is saying, good evening, Aquavita. My happy dram is the one that reminds me of the friends I miss. And that's Daft Mill 15 for now. Daft Mill 15 was one of those informal drams that we poured in Legfest at the end of September last year. Fantastic. A one that Sevi donated as well. Wonderful, Jimmy. I'm glad you're enjoying it. Ginger Genius is saying, good evening, Roy and all the Barflies. No work tomorrow, so settled in with an Ardna George Hotel and a Loch Lomond Distillery Batch 5. Easy influenced. Not this kid. Tell me though, you've been influenced because you're getting people talking about both those bottles of whiskies. I was influenced into the George Hotel bottle. Loch Lomond, as soon as it drops, I buy those distillery exclusives from Loch Lomond. Are you happy that you've been influenced? I think maybe I would argue that you have been. George Ellis saying, hello, Roy. Hope you're very well. Me pushing back hard on the rising tide of whiskey prices. That's right. That's what we have to do that. But we also have to, George, measure where there is no rising tide. There are two tides active here. And one is just, I don't know, obliviously just gone on to wreck things. And the other one is being really quite calm, measured and canny, and I want to focus on that one tonight. Lowlander is here. I need more happy drams after the Scotland result this evening. I mean, you too. Do you know what? It looked like a great game at times. Obviously, I had to peel away during the second half to come in and set up in advance of the game. Caught the first half. It looked just a wee bit of finishing, a wee bit of accuracy and things. But it looked like we'd given ourselves a chance, and then a daft wee penalty at the end. Why am I talking about football again, Lowlander? Come on, stop it. David Hong is saying, good seeing you, Roy. Leaving work and we'll catch on the replay, buddy. Thank you very, very much for dropping in and buying me a wee dram when you're 5, 6, goodness knows how many hours. Well, you'll be behind us, of course, David, in the US. Thank you for your generous dram, buddy. Cheers to you. I've had a dram in as well from Canada, from a Boris Johnson. Fantastic avatar as well. Does your wife beat you up if you drink too much, is being said. I share a story on here, Boris. I think that, and we always have to be careful. We have to be mindful about what we drink. But I think that because I'm drinking such small pours in a measured way, in a contemplative way, I would argue that I probably drinking less alcohol than I ever have in the past. However, if I'm drinking the same or more, I am mindful of it and I can almost measure what I'm drinking. I think we always need to be a wee bit mindful. What I do for the vPub is I decide how many drams I'm going to have in advance, and I put out the right amount of Glencairns. I've got 6 Glencairns in front of me tonight, so you'll see me pouring 6 drams, and this wee warm-up dram is a 7th. That's my drams on Thursday night. I don't have any commitments early in the morning. I'm not driving the kids to school or anything. This is sounding a wee bit preachy, and I apologise for that. But Boris, thanks for the dram, and thanks for helping us to be a wee bit mindful of the fact that we are drinking ethanol, which is a poison at the end of the day. Lots of people joining Aquavitae Barflies. Al and Ian Bruce both supporting me. That's fantastic, guys. Look, I think you've been Barflies for a long time. Maybe just refreshed or renewed tonight. Thank you for your support, along with Andy Grant. And Julian Rickman celebrating being a member of the Barflies for 28 months, saying, Roy, keep the vPub fun. The joy is in the sharing. I agree with you, Julian, very much so. Like I say, it's okay to critique from time to time. It's okay to say things when things are so. And I tend to find that most of the time you guys will agree with me. And if I don't say a lot of these things sometimes or comment on these things that are happening, it's probably louder by staying silent than if I'd just spoken about it, right? Anyway, thanks for your support in the Barflies, along with James, the Grain of Malt. 18 days until I land in the motherland. Of course, James, fantastic. Looking forward to seeing you. Glenn B has signed up for the Barflies, along with Brian Cabayas, celebrating for 8 months, saying, I enjoyed last week's vPub. Per was a great guest. He was fantastic. I want to mention that. And Jesse Artanzalo is saying, celebrating being a member for 33 months, saying, good evening, Aquavitae and Barflies. All the Barflies is what we call the YouTube members. And by signing up to be a YouTube member, you'll never need to sit through an ad watching any of the Aquavitae channel content. And it also gives you access to lots of as well as the wee loyalty Barfly badges, of course. Lots of little channel themed, whiskey themed emoji. Fantastic. So good to welcome you all in. It's because it's only me tonight. It's the first solo session since the start of whiskey season. I'll do my very, very best to keep my eye on the chat tonight and interact with you a wee bit more than I have in the last couple of weeks. But just suffice to say, thank you, everyone, for joining me on a Thursday night. It's wonderful to have the positive, happy company. Indulge me while I spend 5 minutes speaking about the OSWAs. If I can get it over in 2 minutes, all the better. The OSWAs are underway. 2 weeks ago, Ralph and I got together and kicked off the process for the 2024 online Scotch Whisky Awards. But a tweak that we made this year has compressed the setup a little bit and made it a little bit more intense. And over the course of 3 weeks, we're going to be doing 3 separate things. The first week was harvesting lots and lots of nominations, suggestions from the community. That's the upgrade this year. That's what we're doing as a new thing. That means that when we go out to the core contributors and ask them to scratch their heads and think deeply about what they're going to nominate for 2024, this year they've got a huge list of recommendations from the community. We went through, we sorted all the data over a week ago, and we took the top 10 and sometimes the top 12 from each of the 6 categories and put that through as public nominations. What that means is that if there was nominations that maybe only 1 or 2 people mentioned, we would look at it and take inspiration from it, but it probably wasn't a popular enough nomination to go through. But if there was 3 or 4 or more, it made it into the top list. That means that when the core contributors are coming up, they've got inspiration in front of them, but we also ask them to pick a minimum of 1 and hopefully 2 from the community nominations, as well as adding their own. That's what's happening in the background right now. And when that's done, we'll put all that together in a completely separate form, and we'll put it out to, we are now counting over 70 active contributors involved in the online Scotch Whisky Awards project. All 70 of those will be given this form, and it'll be a checkbox form this time, a very, very easy thing that's very light on their time, and they will put forward their selections. And through that process, Ralphie and I are going to, on the 14th of September, relay what the top 6 nominations for each of the 9 categories are on 6 o'clock on the 14th of September, so just over a week from now. What we have tried to do, though, to help people as they're trying to pick this, most of the community that put forward their nominations realised how difficult it was. A lot of them used the ability to go in and change their mind and edit it before the poll closed. And a lot of the feedback that we got through that form was that this is harder than I expected. So a lot of the community is realising the difficulty that the nominators have, the core contributors and the larger contributor pool, to pick just 1 or 2 favourites. It's pretty difficult. So to help that, what we did this year to try and visualise and encourage variation is that we told people if something had been mentioned in the OSWAs previously, if it had been nominated in the OSWAs previously, we asterisked it. We put a little asterisk next to it to let people know. If it's been nominated more than once in the OSWAs in the past, 2 asterisks. And if it'd been a category winner in the past, you know what's coming, 3 asterisks. And that gave everyone a visual to say, okay, that's a good pick, but I can see it's been picked before. Now, they might decide to stick with that and say, still, it's the best one there. That's the best one, and I'm picking with it. But it might also give them pause to think a bit longer and think a bit deeper and not just pick the most popular and not pick the most obvious. We are not going to footer with any of the picks. We're not going to kick things out and deselect things simply because they've been mentioned before. It's not what the OSWAs are about. The OSWAs are there to represent the online Scotch whisky community. So whatever you guys pick, we will put forward. And that's just what it is. However, it would be nice. It would be nice from my perspective if we could represent just how varied the whisky scene is across the globe right now. And I think as a Scotch whisky community, we have the ability to do that thing, to celebrate fantastic, fantastic whiskies and show just how diverse and varied the scene is. That's what's happening in the background. I'm looking forward to welcoming you on Saturday, the 14th of September. Save the date, 6 o'clock in the evening. Ralphie and I will be together. It'll be a remote thing. Ralphie will dial in remotely, but we'll go through all 9 categories and we'll reveal all of the nominations for 2024. For me, I love the winner's ceremony. I love the fact that everybody steps forward to participate. I like the buzz about it. But I think the real value from the OSWAs comes from the nominations. That's what I think anyway. So I hope you're looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to bringing it to you. All right, let's get on with tonight's topic. Let's start with... Should I just start with having the whinge? Should we just get the whinge out of the way? Let's just do this. It's madness. Some of you might have realised the news was shared widely this week that Ardbeg has brought back to life. There's a renaissance of its 17-year-old. This is a good thing. This is a positive thing. The rumours have been going around for a long time, and there were some leaked labels shared and things like that. But we noticed on the leaked labels that 40% ABV was the presentation of this thing, and we thought, oh, okay, maybe they're going to bring it back. Are they going to do that? Are they going to take a step backwards? Are they going to go back to the original 17-year-old and bring it back to the way it used to be at 40% ABV? And that's transpired to be true. That's exactly what they've done. They've released a 40% ABV 17-year-old Ardbeg. Okay, we can kind of understand this. But in the late 90s, the 17-year-old, before I got into whiskey, the 17-year-old was released onto the whiskey enthusiast planet. This is just as at the time that single malt was starting to get a bit of traction, okay? There wasn't a huge swell or a huge movement for natural presentation. It stayed active for about 6, 7, 8 years, I'm not sure, but I think until about 2004 it was discontinued, the 17-year-old. And by that time, Ardbeg available on the shelves as a core range product, 17-year age statement, £29.99, an absolute bargain. Probably pricey compared to blends and things at the time, of course, but for a good quality single malt, people were very, very happy with it. When it was discontinued, it was replaced by much more natural, much more forward-looking, much more zeitgeisty, contemporary style single malt presentation. The 10-year-old was put out there at 46% ABV, for example. Later followed Ugadal and Corryvreckan and things like that at even higher ABV. All of them unchill filtered natural colour. Fantastic. Everybody fell in love with Ardbeg again. And that 17-year-old became a bit of a cultish whiskey, a bit of a legend, a bit of a kind of vanguard, a standard bearer for the renaissance behind Ardbeg. And with nostalgia and time passing and people hunting down all the dusties and buying them up and drinking them, it's become a wee bit of a legend. A press release, though, I don't know whether to see it as cynical or patronising or probably both, but the press release came out this week from Ardbeg that they were bending over backwards and doing things that they might have otherwise not done, such as chill filtration and dilution to 40%, in order to bring us back the legendary 17-year-old Ardbeg. They've done all of this for us. This was for the loyal fans. This was for the loyal devotees, I think is the phrase that they put out in the press release. Okay, they're looking backwards. They want to go back and look into the past when they weren't doing things right. They made a policy decision to change things to naturally very, very quickly when they discontinued. In fact, before they discontinued that 17-year-old. But for some reason, they want to look back. They don't want to bring the 17-year-old out at natural presentation. Why? Not sure. Has it got anything to do with money and shareholders? There's a lot more whiskey in a 46% bottle of whiskey. By just rule of thumb, if you measure just the alcohol and nothing more, it's 15% more whiskey, isn't it, over a 40% bottling? That costs money, of course it does. How much more money? Well, I told you that it's $29.99. When I saw Ardbeg 17 on the shelf, it was £40, but it was later. It was actually after it had been discontinued. I'm not suggesting that was a hiked price. It was just sitting about on shelves. £40. It was a bit pricey for me back then in 2005. That's how much it was. But it was launched at £30, $29.99. They've even put this in the press release. But they also mention in the press release that it's going for £650 on secondary market, and it will be retailing at £160. £160 for diluted 40% ABV whiskey that is supposed to, in some way, to thank the loyal devotees and followers and fans of Ardbeg. This is a slap in the face. Like the annual shenanigans that we get from Ardbeg. Every time there's a new committee release or a fascial or whatever it may be, it comes out with another ridiculous price point. And they've been doing it year after year after year. And I don't know how many people are falling away from Ardbeg and how many new people are coming in. They must be doing something fantastic, because if they feel that they can go in this direction and do these things, it's just, I have no words. The core range has been celebrated loudly and widely on the vPub. That Ardbeg 10-year-old, I've called it the Guardian of Islay. Honestly, I'm at the stage now where I'm like, well, how are the fans being rewarded? How are the true devotees? How are the people that celebrated the Renaissance and the renewal of Ardbeg? Is that really how you're treating them? Is it maybe that the fans and the devotees of Ardbeg today are very, very wealthy people? But I suspect it's not that. I suspect that it's aspiration on Ardbeg's, like every large legacy producer out there, if I'm honest. Sorry, not every, like many of them. That the aspiration is on their part. Their business model, they've been sold that their business model, in order for them to thrive and succeed and be successful, is to move in a premium aspirational direction. And the easy shorthand way of doing that is to make the prices, make it look as if this must be the best product. So now everyone is fighting for that high price point space. They're in a race to see who can eat the seed corn first, while they destroy that loyal fan base. It is so desperately saddening. It's disgusting. I had this vPub about positivity and Happy Drams set up before that news came out this week. We knew it was coming back. We didn't know how much it was going to be, and we were worried that it was going to be at 40% ABV. Well, now it's out there. And I'm going to share with you a whole host of whiskies. None of them are anywhere close to that price point. And most of the whiskies I'm going to share with you tonight, you can buy 3, 4, 5 bottles of it for the price of one of those Ardbegs. You will get multiple times more enjoyment, and you will be many, many more times happier through going that route, believe me. It's terrible. Jimmy Legg is saying, I'm still happy. Greg's Whiskey Guide is saying, now that said, Roy, one could mention that the new Dalmore 17-year-old Amaron Port Cask is no less than £1,000. Ha ha ha. This is the thing. This is the thing I'm talking about. Listen, when was the last time we actively spoke about Dalmore on the vPub? It gets a mention because it's a Scotch malt distillery, makes good liquid, but the way that that liquid is handled and presented to us, not so good. We're not interested in Dalmore. We're just not. The word is going to get out there at some point in the time that the people that are closest to whiskey, the people that are most knowledgeable about whiskey, you guys, don't touch Dalmore. They don't touch Macallan. And it's getting closer and closer to the point that they're going to move away from Ardbeg as well. Everyone, Chris is here saying it's not a luxury product if it doesn't carry a luxury price. This is the myth, isn't it? So I guess that there are going to be brands out there that's going to make that their business model, and they'll move forward in that way. And we have to just relax and accept that that's the way of it. That's the way it's going to be. But do not package it up like you're rewarding your loyal fans and devotees, because you have not done that at all. Andy Pearce is saying, as enthusiasts, we build them up and they reward us by knocking us down. I think that sums it up quite nicely, Andy. It's good to have you in, buddy. Carlos Sanders is here saying, if everybody is premium, no one is. I think that's the worry that we're in. Everybody's racing up that aisle, you know, but we know by the bling, we know by the shiny gold and the polished wood and all of that stuff, and these luxury goods aisles, these boutiques, these airport travel exclusive type places. We know that that's not our place. We know that we're going to have to pay far too much for the liquid, and we know where to find flavour in much, much more comfortable places. Jesse Artanzalo is saying, good evening, Aquaviti and Barflies. Good to see you, Jesse. Always great to welcome you in. And Gordon Fraser is here saying, Ardbeg your pardon. A good way of putting it, Gordon. Absolutely. The pun is welcome. Anthony Lambert is saying, Ralphie and Roy ranting both in the same week. Although, Roy, your rant wasn't as shouty as Ralphie in the week. Keep it up. Industry needs shaking up sometimes. I didn't watch Ralphie's extras, but I enjoyed his Deanston 18 video. And I felt like I was watching Ralphie packaged into one video. I realized that anybody could come along and watch that video with Ralphie, regardless of where they are in the whiskey journey, and learn lots of very, very valuable basics in one review of a Deanston 18-year-old. He was just in full song. He was just very direct. Ralphie, just block by block by block. And at the end, he celebrated and shouted positively and loudly about a whiskey that he's grown to love. He's reviewed it, I think, 3 times. Deanston 18-year-old. You might see it getting a mention tonight. Reb Mordecai is saying, please put the blame where it belongs. Oh, Reb, it jumped there. It's back. Moët Hennessy, Louis Vuitton, Moët Hennessy, not the guys at the distillery. That's caveat everything we say that. So even when I talk about Dalmore, we know that they make great malt whiskey. We know that Ardbeg make great whiskey. We love visiting Ardbeg. We love going and visiting the team at the distillery. This is all fantastic. Something happens between when it leaves the distillery and it gets a label slapped on it and a ridiculous price. Olander is saying it's somewhat ironic in the space. In a week, we have Jura releasing a whiskey with a high ABV, no colour added and non-chill filtered, while Ardbeg are releasing this. I want to mention that. It's only in Europe, as far as I can see, that brand new Jura with an age statement, all natural presentation as well. I have never been so anxious to get my hands on a bottle of Jura. I really hope that it comes to the UK. I hope that it arrives in the UK soon. I guarantee you it will be featured on the vPub regardless of how good, bad, or in between it is. I want to embrace renewal and renaissance. That is a perfect reminder that it's possible. As if you're helping me with the segues, we'll bring up the first section. Not only are we talking about Jura, a White & Mackay producer, but I'm going to celebrate another White & Mackay distillery. You know what that's going to be, don't you? You all know what it's going to be. I have a fetish now for this distillery. I love it. I absolutely love it. There's only one that's kind of, I feel, let me down in recent years. This is since their original relaunch was a bit clumsy, but they've done such great things since that original relaunch that we now have a large-scale producer that's kind of premiumizing their product, and yet somehow somebody's got their hands on the tiller and they're keeping it balanced. So for every stupid, expensive, high-end premium halo bottling that appears, along comes a banger, a beautiful whiskey that enthusiasts can be happy about Can anyone guess the distillery I'm talking about? My fetish for Fettercairn. This is the Warehouse 14 I'm holding up to you. This is batch 1 of Warehouse 14. This has appeared on a vPub in the past. There are lots of Fettercairns out there. You know the ones to look at and you know the ones to avoid. Follow the price point. If it's the 18-year-old that's part of the Scottish Oak project, it's pricey. It's up nudging towards £175, £200. Too expensive. But it's a very, very specific thing with a specific project behind it, and there's depth to that product, actually, but it's still too expensive for us. I'm talking about things like their 16-year-old, much more affordable, sub £80. Often you can pick up for 70. And it's not, as long as it's the natural 16-year-olds, you can tell that they're natural because they're paler, they're by colour, and it says that they're natural on the bottle label as well. As long as it's that 16-year-old and the Warehouse series, whether it's Warehouse 2, various batches, or the Warehouse 14, are all fantastic. Fantastic. If you visit their distillery, they don't have distillery exclusives, but everything that they sell through travel retail, they sell direct from the distillery also. Nice touch. Very cosy, welcoming place as well. I'm going to pour a wee bit of this Warehouse 14 batch 2. This was released last year in 2023 at 51.2% ABV. I paid, I think, 65 quid for this going from memory, but you can pick this up now for the low 50s, depending on where you go, depending on whether it's on offer or not. A whiskey of this presentation, on the box, by the way, it did have all the vintages of the whiskey, and that text is going to be too small for me to tell you on the back. It's not particularly old. I think this one, going from memory, Warehouse 14, it might have been a 2015 vintage, but these are all vintage based. Sorry, I should have swatted up on this before I shared it with you, but honestly, I'm just using it as an example. You can go after any of them right now. Warehouse 14 batch 1, sorry, is a recommendation from me. Be wary of Warehouse 2 batch 4. It was the most youthful of them all, but they're all fantastic value. They're all banging whiskies. This is presented in a way that makes us interested at a great price point. However, when you sip this, I mean, the nose is just so, if you're anything like me, and you might notice a few of the whiskies I've picked tonight are based on my preference, my preferred lane: stone fruit, tropical nature, light, bright. That's my style of whiskey. That's the preference I have for whiskey. Sometimes I get into the colder months, the winter months, and I fall towards sherry and peat and things, but my preferred lane is usually that. And this is right up that lane, but there's a richness to things. There's depth, layers. There's a nice jamminess to this. Nice bit of spice. Apricot jam, a light jam, something like that. But there's just this kind of lovely, bright, tropical, appealing, inviting side. I enjoyed this bottle, bought a backup, put it on the side, forgot about it. Was so grateful to pick it up and reconnect with it recently. If anybody enjoys the Aquavitae Loch Lomond bottlings, it's not the same, but it's very, very similar in profile. That fruit forward, it's literally bursting with fruit. On the palate, you've got a lovely kind of sweet, juicy fruit. The apricots are ripe. That tropical note is there. A wee bit of grapefruit, a wee bit of bitterness in there, a wee bit of spice, white pepper, light spiced, very delicate cinnamon. Just terrifically well put together whiskey. Terrific stuff. I'm going to be evangelizing about a lot of whiskies tonight. But if any of you have not yet picked up a Fettercairn, a modern, contemporary Fettercairn, a natural Fettercairn that's reasonably priced, I think this would make you happy. Pop it over there. It's going to need to make a space for a lot of bottles in the background. A wee dram come in from my pal, Ephead Rolfie over in Norway, saying, I'm in a happy place, Roy. Fantastic, buddy. Good to see you. I hope that when you come to Glasgow at the end of the month as well, that we can make it a happy place for you too. Looking forward to seeing you. Yikes, almost 4.5 years, says Stevie, celebrating being a member of the Barflies for 53 months. Been a wee while since I've seen you. I noticed that wee yellow and blue avatar and that wee Ukrainian avatar, buddy, when you dropped in earlier on. It's wonderful to have you here. Stay till the quiz at the end. I've got an absolute belter for you tonight, Steve. I know you like to participate in it. Hey, Rolfie and Steve A, Carlos Sanders and everyone, cheers. Thanks for your support. Can't wait to see you, Rolfie. So I'm calling this Renaissance and Renewal because you see that step that White Mackay are taking with Jura. We're starting to get a wee bit nervously excited about that. We're confident that Jura made good malt whiskey, but the way it was presented time after time after time after time seemed to be through a process or a filter of cynicism. Either cynically jacked in price with weird stuff going on, or cynically budget. And if you're going to make something budget and high volume and supermarket volumes and things like that, we understand the model for that. There's kind of got to be dilution. There's got to be corners cut. There's got to be ways that processes that you put malt whiskey through that malt whiskey doesn't really want to go through. And it's not always great when it comes out the other end. Certainly, it's not ever a better product than what was actually made. Blending and things like that aside. If you strip that whiskey, if you dilute that whiskey, if you dose it with emulsifying, ugly, horrible caramel colorant, you're not doing the whiskey any favors. However, you do all of those things to make it easy to sell, cheap, and look pretty and taste smooth. Jura have started to move in a direction that we've been shouting about for a long time. Why can't it be both? Why can't you have the high volume product, but have something in your lineup that we can get behind as well in order for us to connect with your distillery so that we're not buying it from an indie or going for a distillery exclusive cask or something like that. Another very positive review from Ralph in recent times. Eric Cunliffe from Canada's bought me a dram as well. A happy, focused vPub feels like aquavita in his natural state. Missing Glasgow with you, buddy. Slancha from the yoga studio. Slancha straight back at you, to you and the gorgeous Renee, buddy. Thank you for dropping in. Thank you for buying me a dram. And thank you for thinking about us and missing us. Cheers, Eric. It's great to have you in. So this Renaissance and Renewal is happening at White Mackay. I feel it. It might not happen at Dalmore, not yet. But I sense that if the Fettercairn thinking work, if it can be a success, and we need to get behind it, and we need to help that be a success. We need to forget that Fettercairn was bad in the past. It really was. Fior and Fask was a farce. If we embrace the ones that are affordable to us now, and we sip it and say, do you know what? This is a really good malt. I'm telling you, it's a unique malt. And there are malt whiskies out there that can bring all of that delicious, delicious fruit. Fettercairn has always been one of them. It was just in the past, it was disguised and masked a wee bit. It's in better hands now, and I feel it. Pick up our affordable, natural, contemporary Fettercairn if your women fancy takes you, and tell me what you think of it. Drop in the vPub, come back to me and share it. If I have let you down, I will take it. I will stand up and be responsible. But I've not just tried one of these. I've tried every one of the Warehouse series now. I've tried the 16-year-old multiple batches. I'm eager for this year's 16-year-old to come out. I didn't buy the 2023 because it was port cask in there. I've still not tried it. Still lots of it around there. So if some of you like a wee bit of port in the mix, you might enjoy that jamminess that port can bring. But I stayed away because I had so much Fettercairn on the shelf. If I see it in a bar, I'm going to try it. I might end up having to eat my words and pick that up too. Loving this stuff. We can call it my Fettercairn fetish for now. Stay away from the expensive stuff, of course. I don't need to tell you that. You're all grown-up adults. I'm celebrating the stuff that's affordable. Cheers. There's lots of renewal and renaissance happening. Honestly, it was one that I just wanted to focus on Fettercairn tonight. There's lots of other renewal and renaissance moves out there right now. We're hearing great things coming from Aberfeldy, for example. Aberfeldy that's been 40% right across the range, even up to their 21-year-old and beyond. We're talking about more natural products coming out from Aberfeldy in the future. I would love to see that come to fruition. We've also heard that the amount of investment that's going on at Glengarry. Now, Glengarry had a decent product out there, 48% ABV for the 12-year-old. What a fantastic dram it is. But Glengarry are actually stepping things up and going back and investing in malt floors and direct fired stills and longer fermentations and peating again, the way that Glengarry used to be back in the old days, the old school days. We're hearing these rumblings of people moving in a natural direction. I worry a wee bit because when there's so much choice out there, and a lot of the new independent distillers have come along and stolen a lot of our attention from giving us exactly that natural stuff. Long fermentations and much more traditional methods, hands-on, handmade, all of that stuff. It might be difficult for some of these bigger brands. But when they do step forward, if Aberfeldy steps forward, if Glengarry step forward, just like Fettercairn has, and Jura might be too, I will celebrate them. And the choices for which to pick up and which to leave on the shelf will be down to you at the end of the day. Of course it will. This positive upswing from some of the unloved distilleries should be rightly be applauded, says Helen. Good to see you, Helen. Hope you're well. As long as it's still a value product. And I think that's the crucial thing. We're all nervous about the price that Jura is going to be when it lands. But on face value, given that I think it's a 16-year age statement and it's €79, that's good value. If it ends up being 70 quid for a 16-year-old here, I'm in. On paper, it looks good. It just needs to be good in the glass. Lowlander. Aquavita likes to mention fetish alongside Fettercairn. Has this become sort of whiskey porn street? No, Lowlander. This is all about me having... I can't call it a guilty pleasure because there's nothing guilty about it. It's a genuine thing that makes me genuinely happy. Fettercairn today is not what Fettercairn was very, very recently. It's a change that's happened in the last 2 or 3 years, and that's why I would refer to it as something that's a bit of a renewal, a bit of a change of pace, and a bit of a positive renaissance to make us all happy. Let's move on, because the bulk of tonight, and I've spread things out over the 4 categories. I'm going to talk about renewal and renaissance. I'm going to talk about new things, new flavours. I'm going to talk about crack and value, and I'm going to talk about surprises. So I've spread them out tonight. There's only one in the first section, but there's a busy section coming up here. I might not sip all 3 of these, but knowing me, I might sip them all. If I'm going to talk about brand new things and brand new flavours, I don't know where to start. There is just so much of it. How can we be negative about that? We can say, oh, it's just too confusing. There's too many things. Oh, is anyone else getting fed up of another new distillery? Oh my goodness, there's just so much coming from that distillery. They're bringing so many expressions. These are wonderfully positive complaints to have, aren't they? Too much choice. It should mean that for us, there is lots of good value, shouldn't it? Shouldn't it? You'd think. However, the last few years have been exceptional. A lot of business models and futures have been based on a huge, huge, huge jump in demand that we saw from 2020 through to the start of 2023. This huge spike that happened. We were buying like crazy maniacs. But what we were doing, and what I suspect a lot of people that were new into whiskey were doing even more than us, they were buying and they were hoarding. And now that that's been hoarded, the buying stops and slows down, the supply chain backs up, the retailers experience a much cooler period, the warehouses get more and more full, and it backs up and backs up and backs up. And we start to see things happen like distilleries to slow down on their capacity and their production scale. We start to see distilleries being shuttered. We're hearing about one of the operations at Penderyn down in Wales being shuttered. And of course, Macmira are currently in a state of transition after their bankruptcy. So we're starting to see things flipping. And I think that there must be a lot of people out there in whiskey generally looking to the future, not nearly with quite the same rose-tinted outlook that they perhaps had as recently as the last few years. Now, the capacity has been increasing for 20 years now. This is not a new thing. It wasn't fully on the back of the COVID pandemic, but it was exacerbated by that. Prices, certainly so. To hear Ardbeg talking about putting a product out there at £160 and very quietly just leaving it hanging in the air to suggest that this is going in the secondary for £650. It's not the same whiskey. The £650 one on on the secondary market is 1970s Ardbeg, or maybe early 1980s Ardbeg. That's what £650 worth. What they're presenting to us at 40% today for £160 is 2000s Ardbeg. It's a different product, absolutely different. It's very disingenuous. However, there are so many products that we are seeing being priced because of the sheer amount of variety. Producers standing up and saying, we need to make drinking whiskey here. If we want people to fall in love with whiskey and understand what it is and understand what flavour in whiskey is and quality and texture is in whiskey, we need to make it so that they drink it and don't hoard it anymore. We need to make drinking whiskey. And I think the whiskies that I'm going to share with you for the next 6 bottles that I'll bring up in front of the screen is going to be exactly in line with that. Let's start with a really recent discovery for me. This is an open bottle. I've only had 1 dram out of this. This was a Master of Malt Indie, a 3-year-old. And I bought this because there wasn't a lot of stock around at the time when I wanted to pick up a bottle of Circumstance based on a fantastic bottling from the Thompson brothers at 57.1% of a 3-year-old Circumstance grain whiskey. I went out there and I just kind of scattergunned Circumstance. And what I'm realizing is there's nothing else like Circumstance out there right now. This is a Bristol distillery. They are making malt, but they are not making malt as we know it. They're making everything that they're going to come out with will either say grain whiskey on there, or it might just say grain spirit. Why? Because they are being so completely deshackled and kind of maverick about things. They are just, their policy, they say, is to put flavour first. Fantastic. I think everybody's doing that. But their way of doing it is to not worry about how their product is going to be categorised. This one here is just English grain whiskey at 3 years old. Anybody guess the price I paid for this? It's 3-year-old whiskey. We shouldn't be paying a lot for it. But it's a brand new distillery, a very small scale distillery at that, tiny. £33. That gave me the confidence to go on and start picking up there. So it's 2 independent bottles I've had from them. That gave me the confidence to go and pick up their official bottling. This is their single grain estate whiskey. This is, again, it's not called malt, it's single grain. So in this one, they're using, let me read out the back. The text is actually big enough to just about read. Flavour first. Circumstance is an independent English whiskey distillery. We use organic grains, brewing yeasts, and extra long open fermentations to make very special whiskey. We use casks from across our warehouse to create our estate, and they've put that in quotation marks there, single grain whiskey. Each cask adds its uniqueness, but all carry the hallmark flavours for which we are renowned, making this whiskey quintessential of our work. This is like nothing that exists out there already. It's whiskey and it's identifiable as being whiskey on the palate. I love it. But again, this is the ABV on this is 45. It's single grain as well. How much would you expect to pay for this? This is their official bottles. I've not seen any of their official bottlings above £40, £30 to £40. Hallelujah. The scale of this distillery is tiny, and they're able to do this. Startup. Let's see a new distillery. This is brand new. I might open this tonight. This doesn't even say whiskey anywhere on the label. I can look at my upside down heat. Can you see me? This is oat. Oh, I'm reluctant to say oat whiskey. They don't say oat whiskey on the back. It says grain spirit. But this is matured for 48, well, actually 50 months. It's more than 4 years old. There's a bottle code here you can put in their website, and it tells you all of the production method and the mash bill and everything like that. And the 50 at the end is the age of the whiskey. But this is partially malted barley and partial oat. I don't know what the mix is. I don't know what the percentage is between the two, but I've only had maybe 1 or 2 oat whiskies. Let's just call it whiskey, brown spirit, in my time. And I've always been struck by the texture, but I've never had much of a chance to sip anything that's mature. Any of the oat spirits I've had have never been beyond 3 years old. They've all been very young. But this one is 50 months old. So let's give it a wee go. This actually only arrived today, this very day. So this is a week, something I'm just squeezing in. I think this is also 45%. No, this is 46.8. So imagine that every release they vary a wee bit in the ABV. Again, they're not really caring about consistency. They're just trying to do the best that they can. This is it's very sweet on the nose. There's a kind of grainy element, but it's a creamy grain element. Almond butter, almond nutty, but it's not a dry nuttiness. It's a creamy sensation on the nose. Yeah, almond butter, marzipan type notes. There's a sweet apricot, a dried apricot, gentle and fruity. Now let's see if we can pick up anything youthful. Not really. I feel like this is quite integrated, quite well put together. There's a wee bit of spirit. There's a wee bit of graininess. Actually, just a big dollop of porridge. It's oats, of course, come on. But genuinely, it's there. There's a porridgey note here, a porridge with syrup. That's maybe the creaminess is like the creaminess you would get from a bowl of porridge as well. Okay, I could nose this all night. Let's have a wee sip. Creamy and spiced. There's an oiliness there. It's not quite thick. It's not as thick and gloopy as I imagined it might have been with that oat thing. I don't know what to expect for oats. No way. Somebody would sip this and they would suspect that there's something a wee bit different here, something that's been tweaked. But I put it to anyone to pick a glass of this up and detect that it's not malted barley or not exclusively malted barley. This is coming across like a very, very good blend, a high quality blend. There's a bit of sugar sweetness. It's different. There's a bit of sugar sweetness, a bit of syrup. Very quiet spice. So moreish, quite drying on the finish. Again, less than £40. So what we're talking about here is from a very brand new, very in demand, very unique, completely fresh outlook distillery, doing exactly what they want to do. I sense that they're just having fun. They're making their happy whiskey, but they're putting it out there at 34 quid, 35 pounds, 38 pounds, 39 pounds. Now you have to think that they are also capable of running a business too, and they're making money out of that. The Thompson Brothers bottle I bought, I think, was 45, 55 pounds, something like that. The Master Malt bottle was about 35, 33. Their own bottle's a similar price to that. We can afford to open our minds. With these prices and these attitudes, we are being encouraged not to be the loyal brand devotee that's going to be abused by brands such as Ardbeg. They're repaying our loyalty with cynical price gouging practices. Luckily, this producer, and like loads of other producers I'm going to be sharing with you tonight, are stepping up to say, we've got your back. You want good whiskey? You want it at a drinking price? You want it to be something that's something to make you happy rather than something to make you look good as an ornament? or as an item of prestige, a brand where it's the look of the thing rather than the substance of the thing. I am now at the point where I'll buy Circumstance blind. Whatever it is. £30, £35, £40. What's the risk? Oh, it wasn't as good as the other one. I preferred their single grain estate, or I preferred their oat whiskey over their... And the range of stuff that they've got is fantastic. Anybody try it? Has anybody tried it? Anyone playing along the Aqua Vitae drinking game? Take a sip now. Gloop. If you play that game, just be mindful and to take small sips. That's the secret. That's the way to get through it. Hoyt is saying, have tried different grain whiskies, not fond of millet or oat. I guess that you in the States, you've probably got access to a lot of different grains as well. I've not tried anything millet-wise. This oat whiskey, I'm already ready to get invested in this and get to know it. I'm enjoying it, Hoyt, already. Molasses Mike is saying, hello, Aqua Vitae and Barflies running late, so a super chatty contractor. I need a dram. Good for you, Mike. Good to have you in, buddy. Don't worry about ever being late. And Stefan is saying, yes, I knew that Circumstance would make an appearance. Love that bottling. Makes me very happy that this tiny distillery, what this tiny distillery is doing, Aqua Vitae. So Stefan Novak is one of these kind of, he's the opposite of somebody who's blindly loyal to a brand. He's one of the most promiscuously adventurous whiskey drinkers, I would suggest. I think that Stefan's collection is going to look a lot like mine. He's going to have a lot of bottles, and the vast majority of them are going to be open because he loves getting into the liquid. If he's enjoying Circumstance, I feel like I'm in very good company. Cheers, Stefan. I'm glad to have opened this one tonight. A wee cracker. A wee cracker. Let's continue. Another uncorking, another one I picked up today. What about the distilleries that have been around for a long time? You know, we've got these whippersnappers turning up here with their 3-year-old, 4-year-old, 5-year-old, 6-year-old maximum malts. What about the ones that have got, tradition? What about the ones that are mature? What about the ones that everybody knows about and have been around for a long time? Of course, I'm talking about long-established distilleries like the West Coast's Ardnamurchan. I think it does seem like that at times. We need to remember that Ardnamurchan have only just this minute turned 10 years old. Incredible. They are so on everyone's lips. And when I say everyone, I'm talking about enthusiasts. Yes, some people still walk into the distillery, and I think it was Tom, somebody said to me recently, I can't remember who it was I was speaking to. They said that some people still walk into the Ardnamurchan distillery and say, oh, I've never heard of you before. Are you new? Little do they know. But that's really encouraging for all new distilleries, isn't it? It's really just encouraging, certainly for Ardnamurchan, that they've still got loads and loads of people curious that they can connect with that don't know just how good the liquid is. I didn't go out and buy this Sauterne release straight away. Sauterne's not usually up my street. Find it a wee bit sweet, a wee bit too sugar sweet to me sometimes. There aren't a lot of Sauterne whiskies out there. Think of Glenmorangie's Nectar d'Or is a good example. Let's see if we can get a glug out of this. Pour a wee tiny dram. Neck pour. I'm not going to review this or anything. What I'm going to do is celebrate Ardnamurchan. They have this knack. There have been a lot of Ardnamurchans, but we need to remember what is all these single casks that come out and what are these kind of core releases. Think of the core releases they've brought out now. Their AD, which is a fantastic, affordable 45 quid whiskey, wonderful stuff. Then they've got their cask strength version of the same, 50-50 peat, or actually more, 50-50 peated in the core range, more peat in the cask strength. Again, a banger of a whiskey, £65. Great value for cask strength malt whiskey too. Smaller outturns in the AD. And then they've added things like the sherry cask to it as well that we'll see appearing quite regularly. A couple of years ago, we saw Madeira. We'll see special editions popping out and disappearing fast like the Paul Lanois editions. But from time and again, we've got a rum cask that came out, I think, last year. And this year, we've got this Sauterne cask coming out. they seem to be good at getting the balance right between not saturating us and just bringing out things that we will be genuinely interested in. New things, brand new things, new flavours. I believe this to be unpeated Ardnamurchan. Finished in Sauterne barriques. Says unchill filter natural colour, 50% ABV. They're giving us that extra ABV that they do in these releases, which I'm really appreciative of. Okay, it doesn't say. I know that if I scanned the wee barcode on the back, I would have all the details at hand. I don't detect any smoke, but that's common for me. I would suggest that if there's any peated stock in this, it's very, very light because I'm detecting nothing. I'm going to say that this is unpeated. Somebody else can maybe check out the Ardnamurchan website or whatever. I could do a wee scan, but I don't even know where my phone is right now. Here it is here. We won't bother. It's not overly sweet on the nose. It is sweet. Sweet, dried light fruit, currants, that type of thing. Sweet apple. Maybe a wee bit something fresh, like a green gauge or something like that. But a ripe green gauge, something that's quite sweet and easy. Can't tell you the last time I had one. It is a bit grapey, maybe. So that's the theme that I'm on. There's a darkness to it. There's a richness to it too. An oakiness. Cheers. You just get hit with this lovely. Ardnamurchan's got this fantastic dry, limestoney, pebbly slate. Is much more prevalent in their peated releases, but all I could think about there was the sweet fruit, and it arrives, and because you're thinking fruit on your mind as it arrives, when that mineralic side hits, 50% ABV. I don't know the age of this, 6 or 7 years, I think. 7-year whiskey. Drinks much more mature. And also, I'm going to go one further and say it drinks less than 50% ABV. I've got a water dropper here in front of me, and I've got a glass of water, a wee jug of water as well. I really don't feel the need to put any water in this. In fact, I'm not even going to bother. When I'm sitting analysing it, if I was sitting down to do tasting notes or something like that, I would put a wee sploosh of water in it just to see how does it tamp things down, does it wake things up, all of those things. But this is just hanging around. I was nervous that this would be overly sweet. I don't think this is probably maybe the sweetest Ardnamurchan, but nothing close to being overly sweet. It's really disarming, that mineralic thing. I'm not going to go as far to suggest salt, but there is a wee bit of salt. I'm going that far. It's there. If you look for it, you'll find it. But it's definitely much more mineralic. So wrapped up in that fruit, just another absolutely fantastic take on the West of Scotland's can put. I've not seen it put a foot wrong. And I know that everyone's a wee bit fed up of hearing everyone get on about Ardnamurchan, but if we want to talk about Happy Drams, and we've got a distillery on the west coast of Scotland that do every single thing as if we were doing it ourselves, if we were making the whiskey ourselves, Yeah, peated and unpeated. Yeah, let's do that. Let's do lots and lots of bourbon casks, but let's mess around with this and this and this. Let's put it in all of these casks too. Oh, while we're at it, can we mix around the barley? Can we make some golden promise? It's just they're doing everything that they can, and yet they're still able to do it at a scale that's making it available everywhere, and it's getting into more and more and more markets all the time. And if you were to, I made a joke, I was tongue-in-cheek about this being a legacy whiskey, a whiskey that's been around for a long time. It has only been 10 years. We need to remind ourselves that it is only 10 years. They are still young and new. But what they've achieved in that time, only 6 or 7 of those years they've had whiskey released for, of course. It's not even that. 2020, the first whiskey came out. 4 years. It's all the mature whiskey that we've been able to drink from there in the last 4 years. What they've achieved in that time is unbelievable. And if we want to talk about whiskey that makes us happy, it's stories like that makes me happy. If I hadn't enjoyed this Sauterne tonight, I wouldn't have cared. I know that Ardnamurchan would put out a fantastic product that I could share with people who have a sweeter tooth. But I know I can recommend this whiskey to people who do have an aversion to sweet whiskey, and they'll enjoy it. The ABV helps so much. It does not distract. This is not hot whiskey. This is deceptively easy to drink. Fantastic. And one more. Take Ardnamurchan's philosophies, take the playfulness, take it out of Scotland, and dollop it in the heart of England. Second English whiskey distillery I'm going to be talking about tonight. Sorry, this is not deliberate. This is purely based on flavour. I'm talking about a distillery down in Derbyshire. Sorry, I'm showing you the back of the bottle there. Wireworks. Now, why am I super excited about this Wireworks? Because I've been super excited about every Wireworks that they've released. The small batch, the inaugural, the Caduro, the Alter Ego. They even had what was the stout cask one? I didn't buy a bottle of it, but it was fantastic. It was, never mind. I don't care what they bring out. It's a buy on site. It's a buy blind. It's a brand new distillery. It's young. They make me so happy. I was super excited about this one, but it came out just as I went on holiday, and I didn't pick it up. But I picked it up recently, and I sat there on the sofa, and I poured it. And I knew there are very few distilleries that's like this. I knew what I was going to taste before I tasted it. Now, I'm going from a back of quite a sweet Ardnamurchan there, coming into this Wireworks tonight. Never sipped it in contrast with anything else. All it has to do is hold up. Get something in the glass. I think that's on the glass, so rather than... Let's see how we do. I just knew what it was going to be like. I was going to sip the Wireworks profile, that lovely gentle balance of spice and vibrance. A lot of it has relied on fresh bourbon and STR. Nothing wrong with that. But this is just all ex-bourbon. Lovely, light, soft lemon, sweet lemon, creamy, sugary vanilla, fondant vanilla. Give myself a wee break. I'm going to come into the chat in a second and pick up what you think of Ardnamurchan and what you think of Wireworks. There must be some refill in the mix. Lightly peated, 53.4% ABV. I think this was about £60, 65. There's lots of small font here. It just says bourbon barrel, so it might be all first fill bourbon, but it's not overly assertive cask-wise. It's just lovely, clean, creamy spirit. So that light, creamy vanilla. It's very lightly peated. I'm not picking up much in the way of smoke on this at all. Type of thing that maybe if you left it with a wee bit of liquid or an empty glass, maybe the smoke would be there for somebody with a blunt palate like mine. Lovely weight, lovely balance, drinkable, drying, a bit of mint. So imagine that sweet sugar and that mint and that vanilla, giving a sense of almost like a Tic Tac type mint. A nice little bit of like a desiccated coconut or something, like a confectionery coconut on the finish as well. This whiskey didn't exist 4 years ago. I think 3 years ago the inaugural came out. It just didn't exist. Fully natural. Right up our street. Presented in a gorgeous thing like this. I mean, if you want to talk about premium, Ardnamurchan's aesthetic is gorgeous. Wireworks' aesthetic is gorgeous. Fettercairn's aesthetic is gorgeous. It doesn't have to be dull and dressed down. It can be, and it can be fun when it's like that. But look at this. It's just a lovely, lovely thing. This is, of course, a glass take on the wireworks, the twisted wires. We can be disappointed by the directions the industry's taken, the legacy producers. They just continually are going out and just seeing how far they can push the envelope and keep charging more and more and more money. And we can just ignore it. It is a song that we don't need to dance to. It is a beat we do not need to march to. It is a bus that we do not need to get on. We will go in our own direction, doing our own thing, and we will be spoiled. If we are truly whiskey lovers and whiskey enthusiasts, if we are whiskey lovers, there is a bazillion things standing up to say, don't worry, we've got your back. It's a fantastic time to be enjoying whiskey. And that's why I wanted to do a positive session tonight. I'm just making a tasting note because I might be reviewing this soon. That coconut thing. That desiccated coconut thing is hanging about. Fantastic. Jimmy Legg has bought us a dram. He's saying, of course, I've never had any of these new distillery bottlings. Of course, it's another caveat I have, Jimmy. I know you're out there in Nova Scotia. It's a bit of a desert, a malt desert, like so many of you are going to be in that same situation. But I always have trouble believing all the raving about them. I can't wait to get there and not like them for sure. Perfect. Perfect, Jimmy. Perfect. And I think we always need to be mindful of that. The fact that, it's going to take a wee while for a lot of these whiskies to travel. It's going to take a long time, I think, for somebody to go into their local specs or, whatever it may be, and just see a Wireworks on the shelf. I don't know what it's called, the equivalent of the state-run Canada off license that you'll have in Nova Scotia, Jimmy. I don't know what the name's called. The LCBO is in Canada, I know that, but that's Ontario, isn't it? But one day you will walk in there, hopefully, and you see something from Wireworks. And I hope that you trust the community enough that if enough of them have been saying this is a great whiskey, that you'll be able to buy it semi-blind, let's say. Red Mordecai is saying it's amazing to think that 20 years ago there were no whiskey distilleries in England. Today, how many are there? 40 to 50? Yeah, I think they've certainly breached 40 distilleries. And we're speaking specifically, Reb, about distilleries that are making malt whiskey. I mean, there are gazillions more making gins and things, right? Specifically focus on malt whiskey distilleries. It's incredible to see. Dave Swift is saying, tracking purchases in Ardnamurchan tops my 2024 buys. Just consistently excellent. This is what you need. Not me soapboxing and talking about, yeah, it's great, it's great, it's great, because you're becoming bored of that now, maybe. But to hear the people that are spending their hard-earned cash on it too, to step up and say that they love it. Make a Dram Decision is saying, really impressed with Ardnamurchan, but haven't had enough Wireworks yet. Well, I hope that you can spread the love a wee bit and pick up an occasional bottle of Wireworks too. Listen, there are lots of English distilleries, as I'm mentioning tonight. I've mentioned 2, Circumstance down in Bristol, and of course, Wireworks. White Peak is the distillery, Wireworks is the brand. But as long as they're bringing it at the prices that are fair, and what I've recommended to you tonight, because it's what makes me happy, are distilleries that are doing exactly that. Ian Bruce is saying, recently bought and opened a Wireworks by That Boutique Whiskey Company. Absolutely fabulous liquid. Only regret is that it's a 500ml bottle. Well, hopefully you paid a decent price, Ian, and you can step forward and go into the official bottlings with comfort. Whiskey with Molly is suggesting that he's going to buy Jimmy Legg a few when he arrives over. Ben, it'd be great to see you there too. Helping me host all of these travelling barflies coming into Glasgow for the 28th of September. I can't wait. Hoyt is saying Diageo stocks have been dropping, so maybe we are having an impact, or people are pushing back on the prices. I think that's a general thing. I think we can often get a wee bit caught up and think that we have much more influence than we actually have. I think our influence is not kind of any kind of reaction that we have to things. I think it's a sustained voice is the influence that we have. You know, it's the Andre Haberecht's, when he talks about his 1-9-90 rule, 1% are vocal influencers, 9% are invested people who might catch that message, and that through that 10% influences the other 90%. I think that's very true, Hoyt. But it takes a wee while for those concentric ripples of kind of messaging to get out there. And some people, even then, they just don't want to hear it. I don't think that's what's happening with Diageo. I think it's much more kind of global trends and things that's happening with Diageo right now in terms of volumes and stocks and stuff. We'll see. We'll see. They're not listening, and they don't care to listen either. They're paying very large sums of monies to agencies who are informed and are leading them. That's what's happening. And Whiskey Veritas is saying the Oversmoke was very tasty and the port finish, the new make on the tour, was exceptional. So there's Oliver, local. Phil, I don't know if you're local, but you're much more local than I am. I hope you're enjoying it too, Oliver. Good to see you. And Chris Pollock is saying Wireworks whiskies have made it even to Austria, and I ordered 2 releases. Chris, how did you get on with them? That's fantastic. I didn't know you were in Austria, Chris. Pedro is saying, I haven't had any Wireworks yet, but we'll definitely be bringing a bottle back home from Scotland later this year. Aquaviti. Ardnamurchan are a big part of my collection already. Fantastic, Pedro. And I'm glad that you're enjoying it. And listen, everything that I share with you tonight, there's going to be people in this community, in this chat tonight. There's over 300 of them been in most of the night. I guarantee you there are people that have tried the same whiskies as me, and hopefully they're able to step up and say, yeah, it was only Meroy, or it was rubbish, or I hope that more often than not they're going to step up and say, yeah, that was a pretty good whiskey. So there we have it. Brand new things, brand new flavours. Ardnamurchan, despite being long in the tooth these days, bringing us a Sauterne. Just because we've never had an Ardnamurchan profile quite like that before. Fantastic. Wireworks bringing us something that's completely naked. No STR. No heavy sherry. No, just clean ex-bourbon. Fantastic. Brand new things. And if you want a maverick distillery out there doing things like you've never seen anything done before, Circumstance, amazing to see. So let's take that, right? Let's take all of these new things. And let's remember that, yeah, it's fantastic to have these new horizons, these brilliant new... But you know what? I fell in love with Scotch whisky through all the Diageo workhorses. I fell in love with Scotch whisky through all these official bottlings that I could just go out and buy. I fell in love with Scotch whisky because of the malt that's been made in Scotland for hundreds of years. Roy, are you telling us that that's gone? Fortunately, no. Because there are ways for us to enjoy the legacy products at fantastic, cracking value. Now, you know what I'm going to share. You absolutely know what I'm going to share tonight when I talk about cracking value. None of these are going to be a surprise to you. None of these are going to be things that you haven't seen before. But when we talk about And if that tide that's kind of just going to rise and rise and rise and going to destroy whatever, because they're chasing premium, because they're chasing aspiration, because they're going in that direction, and they're leaving us behind. So we're on this much more kind of humble tide. They're just kind of looking and going, well, we can't afford all of that stuff. We can't go down that flow. We have to find our own. There are companies out there I don't know how they're doing it. It's just maybe because of the stocks that they have, the access that they have, the outlook, the vision, the philosophies, the ethics that they have. I don't know what it is, but why question when they're bringing us such fantastic things? This has been on. Look, I'm going to hold this one up because you'll recognize. I haven't even opened this one up yet. I'm buying it for stock, but I've opened up a few of these. Look at this. This is Signatory Vintage with their 100 proof series. Come on, camera, please stay focused on this because it's something that you really need to be focused on. I'll wait. Will I wait for you or will I force it? Come on. I think that is a very attractive label. If we talk about aesthetics, they've managed to make a tall round, a generic whiskey bottle, look pretty attractive. This new label with the cutout, the shape of it, the information, the gold, just everything about it feels like this is a nice bottle of whiskey. Every single thing from their 100 proof series comes out at 57.1% ABV, virtually cask strength. Obviously, they're diluting the majority of it, if not all of it, down to 57.1, but it's just a wee bit. 100 proof right across the board. And they're putting it out at £45, £46, £48, £43. Those price points. It's not a flash in the pan that happened because everything was stuck in wintertime last year. Release after release after release. This one that I'm holding now is quite an early one, I think. I think they've started to number them now. Oh, it is numbered. This is number 8. This is number 8 release, which is Glentorchar's 2012. Quite surprised I've not opened this one yet. I've got the Ben Nevis on the go. I've got Linkwood on the go. I've got other ones on there that are open. But I did have one criticism. What about during the summertime when I'm fed up with these big, heavy sherry bombs? What about when I'm fed up with these? Where are the bourbon cask? And of course, they've come out with things like this now. Glenord 2012, first fill bourbon barrels. 11-year-old Glenord. Now, Glenord is a very kind of rarely seen, it's a huge, huge facility up in the Northern Highlands. Part of Diageo, they've got their own drum maltings there. They've got a visitor centre and things. But in Indies, it kind of goes through these gluts. You see quite a few and then you see none for years. There's not a lot of Glenord around. This is 2012 Glenord. So it's 100 proof series, so it's 57.1% ABV. Because it's first full bourbon barrels, you see the difference in colour straight away, how much paler it is. Bright, shiny gold against this kind of more burnished copper and gold of the sherry cask. Do I need to pour this to tell you that it's fantastic? I've only had one dram out of this, but let's do it. This is not one I had marked to sip. Let's not. Let me just reassure you that this is fabulous, fabulous whiskey for the price. Signatory was always a kind of, not everything that they bottled was going to be fantastic. Some of it can be a bit plain, but it's never bad. It's never bad. And these 100 proof series, the price point that they're charging for, we should just be going in and just being happy that they exist. They've elevated it. They've moved away and they've brought us some ex-bourbon stuff. And they're elevating it some more, and that's what I'm going to bring to you now. Chris B, good to see you. Chris, how you keeping, buddy? Saying, where do I find cool new stuff like this in Backwater, USA, New Mexico? Okay, I'm confusing my Chris B's. It's a different Chris B, Chris from New Mexico, fantastic. Backwater, USA, I know that it means you traveling. I know that it means you networking. I know that it means you trying to access some kind of meal network to bring you back occasional treats and things like that. I know it can be tricky. What I think I want the takeaway to be from this tonight is that even when you can't get the specific bottles, there is a groundswell of this stuff coming from indies like Signatory, from indies like another one I'm going to present to you later on tonight, Little Brown Dog, from indies like Adelphi, from indies like just loads and loads and loads. But most of the distilleries I'm going to be talking about tonight, with the exception of only 2 or 3, are indies. They're not indie bottlers. They're independent producers. They're independent distillers. Ardnamurchan's independent distiller. They're part of Adelphi, right? Circumstance, utterly independent. These companies that I'm talking about, Wireworks, White Peak, and an independent company, this is the groundswell that is coming. You might, because of the scale you need to reach to make decent distribution deals for it to go into the States and all of these kind of places, and through the different laws and legislations and barriers and red tape and things, it's going to be difficult. But you will start to see them. And if you've heard us speaking about it on the vPub from a European perspective, a British perspective, a Scottish perspective, it means that when it does arrive with you, or you're traveling and you see it, you're immediately aware of it. And maybe you're filled with the confidence to pick up a bottle when you can't try before you buy. Thank you very much, Chris, for your generous dram. And it's nice to have you in from New Mexico. Cheers. Signatory have gone one further with this 100 proof series. Here we have a 2007 Macduff, a 16-year-old 100 proof series release, 57.1%. Of course it is 100 proof. But here you see this little white bar up here. It says exceptional cask. And of course we know it must be an exceptional cask because it's got a black label. How do you mark your bottle as being something different? Well, if you're going to give it a black label, that suggests that it's much more aspirational, perhaps. Listen, it's pretty. It's still attractive. It's just every bit as attractive as the white label ones. This black label one, it's very hard to read the bit that says 100 proof in the background. But what we've got here is they're marking as exceptional cask. Fine, that's what they're calling the range. I suggest that it's probably going to be something that's a bit older. This is a 16-year-old, 57.1% Highlander from Macduff. We never see it. It's very difficult to find typically. Signatory have stocks. But if you see it on the shelf, it's usually sold as the Deveron or Glendeveron, depending on where you buy it from retail or from travel retail. But that's from Macduff. No glug from the bottle. I've had a dram out of this, that's why. You'll notice that most of the bottles tonight are things that's making me happy. They've already been opened. 16-year exceptional cask version of the same 100% proof, 100-degree proof. Okay, this is straight down in the opposite direction from everything I've been sipping tonight. This is heavy, rich, deep plum, rich sherry. Not spiced sherry. This is a kind of sweet sherry. I'm going to suggest this probably nosing a wee bit like American oak. It just says first fill at Oloroso sherry butts. All of these are small batch whiskies. They're not single cask. Rich. This is going to be the type of whiskey that carries me nicely into winter time. How much then? We've gone up. 11 years old. 10, 12, 11, 9 years old, 8 years old. That's been the 100 proof series up to now. Exceptional casks, probably going to be much more interesting casks or something that's carrying a bit more maturity. This is release number 3, £65. It's 57.1% ABV, almost the same age as that Ardbeg I talked about earlier, £65. Big rich whiskey, big impact from the ABV, lots and lots of spice, lots and lots of cigar notes, cigar leaf going on, cedar wood, very much in that area, but there's a nice sweetness to this. It's like it's not a jammy, but let's go with a sweet fruit, like a sweet plum, a ripe plum, something like that. I don't know how complex this is. It might be quite a straightforward whiskey. I need to spend a wee bit more time with it. But the impact and the flavour and the weight of it is massive. No challenges, no odd ends, no difficulty about it, no sulphur that I can detect. The type of whiskey that you could put in front of somebody that's fairly new into whiskey and they would not detect that they were sipping 57.1% ABV. I suspect. £65. So from Signatory alone, we've got this huge gamut of all the whiskey we need. If we went out there and just bought the Signatory 100 proof, you know, a couple of lightly peated Orkneys, a peated Kalila, a few sherried of Glentochers or a Linkwood or a Ben Nevis or whatever it was, and that was the only whiskies that we had on the shelf, not only would we have a great value, this collection of whiskies that make us very happy, we'd have spent very fair amounts of money on putting that collection together. That exists today when this time last year, nobody had heard of it. That makes me very happy. Let's go on one further. If we talk about these being a very, very pretty aesthetic, let's talk about a producer that's just gone for the playfulness of it all and the fun. Thompson Brothers with their 8-year-old North Highland. This has been opened on the vPub already. It was opened before the summer shutdown rather, breakdown. This was the 44.5% ABV batch 1, and I've since picked up batch 2. The only way you can tell the difference is 44.4% ABV, ever so slightly different, and a tiny wee note on the back, just to down below that, saying batch 2. This is the second batch. From what I can gather, it's the exact same. I've sipped the two of these. I've opened this and sipped it backwards and forwards, and I thought I could clearly taste the difference between the two. Said, yeah, the new one is a bit more rich, a bit more rounded out, and maybe it tastes a wee bit older even. I was convinced I could taste a difference, but then I switched the glasses around, sipped them backwards and forwards, and I couldn't tell the difference. Second guessed myself going backwards and forwards, so I just accepted that the new the Dram had out the new bottle. It was every bit as good as the previous bottle. So what we have here, despite its gaudy robes, right, despite its pretty ugly labelling, is a bottle that's been put together just to cater for the people like us that pursue this as a hobby, that pursue this as something that we enjoy. We really enjoy the flavour of this thing, and we want to be able to have something that we can afford, and we don't want to be too pretentious about how it looks on the shelf. This is whiskey for whiskey folk. That's the way I interpret this bottling anyway. There might be a deeper meaning, there might be some kind of a bigger joke that I'm not privy to, but that's the way I view this whiskey. This is an age statement, 8 years old. This is natural whiskey despite being lower ABV. It's all about the price on this release. This is 30. One of these I spent 35 or 38 pounds on, and the other one I spent 33 pounds. Depends on where you go for it. But again, as recently as 2020, we weren't finding 8-year-old natural whiskey for 33, 35 pounds. And now we've got multiple places to go for fantastic ABV whiskies. This is a very, very light. This is very spirit driven. This is kind of ice and sugar mice, that kind of thing. It's very, very creamy, very, very, very vanilla. It's a session whiskey. That's a good way to describe this. It's a type of whiskey that you're going to sip on your own or in company or whatever scenario you want to put it in. Everybody will appreciate it. Everybody will enjoy it with zero anxiety about the cost of replacement. The only anxiety you'll have is how quickly it's selling out. Lowlander is saying every little helps. That's a Tesco thing. It's it's a tongue-in-cheek take on Tesco labelling of old, absolutely Lowlander. And Ian Bruce is saying Thompson Brothers Kelly bottle. You're quite right. Yeah. That's absolutely spot on. Jimmy Legg, Kelly has in Kilmarnock as in the football team, for anybody who wasn't aware of Ian's pun. Jimmy Legg is saying we had the summer breakdown due to the summer shutdown. Of course, Jimmy, yes. But we're back. We're in good shape, aren't we, buddy? I can't wait till you come over again. Dorpas Whiskey Tim is saying, really recently opened by Signatory 100 of Thrusk, 13-year-old, very dark. Have quite a few of these so far. My favourite is the Glentochers. Fantastic. Glentochers is the one that is still to be opened. So that's good that you're enjoying it. I did buy it on recommendation. Duder Court is in. That's Mike. How you doing, Mike? How you keeping? Agavitian, there's me worried I'd be paying triple figures for it, I shall be grabbing a bottle of that, no doubt. Well, grab it while you can. The first batch just went so fast that I think that the second batch was done much quicker than they originally planned of the Thompson brothers. Glad you're loving it. Ryan Sutherland is saying, Agaviti, £42 for my new blend. Treat yourself. So what Ryan's talking about there is up at 8 doors, almost like a while you wait type project. They're putting together their own whiskies. Sometimes it's a sourced whiskey, a single malt, and other times it's a whiskey that they're blending and putting together, and I think they're calling it, correct me if I'm wrong, Brian, Seven Sons. I bought a bottle. Ryan offered me a bottle for free, and I said, tell me about it, and I'll buy it. Feel very rude. It's an awkward exchange, isn't it? It's like, oh, thank you, but no. But I know Ryan, and I know that he would just be wanting to give it to me, and he would want me to just enjoy it and things. And I said, no, because I know Ryan, if I buy it myself and I enthuse about it, it's genuine, and I'm not just being nice about it because my pal Ryan's given me a bottle of whiskey. So I went out and I bought a bottle of his Seven Sons blended Scotch whiskey. Now, this was a year ago, so I'm sure it's changed since then, but I guarantee you it's going to be just as good. I took it to a tasting. I was doing a private tasting. I was hosting a bunch of folk in Glasgow, and that was the opening dram. It was up against some fantastic whiskies that night, and it was second from top, and it was only beaten, I think, in fact, I'm not going to say, it was only beaten by one whiskey that was much, much more expensive. People loved, and usually it's very, very rare for the first dram, the opening dram, to get anybody's attention because they've moved on so quickly up the steps to the much more bold, the much more rich, the much more peaty, the much more striking. And that wee Seven Sons whiskey did very, very well, Ryan. If you're putting that out there for £42, I guarantee you it'll be a good one as well. You'd get a hard time in the vPub from all of these folk if you'd put out a dud, right, buddy? Whiskey, Jason Whiskey Wise, good to see you, Jason. How are you keeping? What was the other Thompson Brothers whiskey which you recommended on the last vPub? Oh, Jason, the other Thompson Brothers on the last vPub? I'm recommending a lot of Thompson Brothers right now. You need to help me a wee bit. You need to help me. I've had a few crackers recently. Brian Cabayas is saying, I got that Thompson Brothers North Highland via the Mule Network. Loving it for the flavour, value and engagement. I did not judge it as a cheap product, let alone a blend. Shared and very much enjoying it. Well, we say blend, but it's a blended malt. It's from Glenord and Clynelish, 50-50 ratio, right? So we're talking about two of the most celebrated malts that's been mixed together in equal proportions, put out there at a drinking price, a drinking presentation, and we're all saying hallelujah. It's just a new way to do things, a way that makes us very happy. Sorry, Roy, old comment says do record. He said, I was talking about the Macduff. It's on my list now for 65 quid. You want a rich, thick, sherried dram? I think you'd be struggling to find something at that price point that could bring you that. 16-year-old Macduff. Ryan Sutherland is saying, it tastes like 90s famous grouse, a fun project. I'll mark it. I'll have a wee look at it, buddy. I like the aesthetic of the bottling of it as well. Okay. Cracking value. Shall we continue just before I go on the cracking value? We've covered the Thompson Brothers, we've covered the Signatory Vintage. But I want to share with you a couple of cracking value things that have always been there. Ralphie inspired me to go back into my Deanston 18. And I sit this along with Ralphie doing his tasting notes and things like that. And this doesn't matter who you're doing it with. If you're listening to somebody giving out tasting notes or whatever, it's quite amazing how many of the notes that they're picking out that you can go, okay, I get that. It's great fun to do it. This is my last glass, my last clean glass, so I'm going to keep it for something else. But to hear Ralphie talking about Deanston 18, I think the biggest takeaway that we can take from that review, and the reason that it was once my whiskey of the year, this is still available for £80 and less. Sometimes 85, sometimes 90, of course, depends on when and where you buy it. But when 18-year-old naturally presented single malt, and when 18-year-old not naturally presented single malt is going like this, stratospheric prices, breaking the £200 barrier and nonsense like this, there are gorgeous wonderful legacy producers bring in quality like this for drinkable prices. You can put an 18-year-old malt whiskey on your shelf in someone's hands as a gift for less than 90 quid. That's bourbon cask though. What if you wanted sherry cask for the same price? Do I need to keep talking about this distillery? They're still doing it. Please don't rebrand. Please don't change what you're doing. Please don't mess it up. But Speyburn are kicking it clean out of the park. This whiskey is unique. This is Worm Tub distilled whiskey as well. Their 15-year-old is gorgeous. If I'm honest, I prefer the 15-year-old a wee bit over this. I find a wee bit more diversity. I find a wee bit more interest. But when you're looking for something decadent and rich and something to pour, if you did not tell them that it was a 85, 90 pounds bottle, they would swear that you treated them to something truly splendid. 80 pounds, 85 pounds, 83 pounds, sometimes 90. Speyburn 18. My kids would call it clutch. Sandy McDonald is in. Sandy, so good to see you, fella. Deanston 18, 65 pounds on Amazon. Listen, we can talk about how it's not maybe the right thing to do. It's not the ethical thing to do to go and support the big blue box of Bezos. But if they're selling Deanston 18 for 65 pounds, money's a bit tight. Fill your boots. Make a dram decision is saying, as for 18s, I really love the Loch Lomond 18. Great value and bang for the buck. Again, another 46% ABV release. Great value. What a great shout. Chris Pollock is saying, I hope the Thompson Brothers North Island makes it to Europe in future. I don't doubt if they can get enough of it out there. Hopefully it will. Don't know if the joke of the labelling translates right. Chris Pollock is, sorry, I just picked that one up, Chris. And Reb Mordecai is saying, I've been buying Deanston 18 for years, but stopped. Recent batches have a strange apple vinegar note to it, in my opinion. Oh, apple vinegar. I would pour that to check, Reb, but I'm all the way through it, and I've not picked up an acidity. Remember, when we talk about single malt whiskey, it's batch made. By definition, it's a variable product. It's made in batches. Take that concept and then put it into a vessel to mature it that is an organic vessel made from a tree or trees that is really, really, really super variable. That's the skill of a blender, to try and keep that consistent, to keep it within that zone each and every time. Interesting that you're picking up some acidity. Ginger Genius is saying currently on Amazon for £64. So different people on different, you getting different prices, but close, 64, 65. Graham Young and I, says Donner Pass Whiskey, who's bought me a wee dram, have the same birthday on Sunday. Cheers to Graham and me. He's 3 years younger, the lucky bugger. I'm going to raise a glass to two fantastic people that I've been able to sit and down and have a dram with. Tim, when he was in Glasgow, Donner Pass Whiskey, and Graham Young. I've had so many drams in Glasgow with Graham that it feels almost like he's living locally. But the fact that you're both celebrating a birthday on Sunday is something to be happy about. Something to celebrate. Happy birthday, Tim. Many happy returns to you. And Graham Young, many happy returns to you as well. I hope you both have a fabulous, fabulous day. Terrific, guys. Wasn't the Thompson Brothers bottle you shared an adult? More in the Buckfast livery. So the Buckfast one is a red wine cask matured. I had it in my hands today at Good Spirits Company. And I almost bought it, but I put it back on the shelf. It literally says on the label, it guides people as to who it's for. And if you're after spirit-driven kind of refill cask stuff, it's not for that. But there's so many people out there saying that it's fantastic that I was tempted today. But money's a bit tight. So once we get back into things again and the summer shutdown's worn off a bit, I'll be able to pick up things like that. There was another one that I really wanted to pick up as well, but I put it back. Hopefully it's there when the money's a wee bit more robust. Ian Bruce is saying, future quiz question, how many distilleries with names in Ben, Glen, Dean and Blair, etc.? Ian, I have used very similar, usually for ASHAT questions at the end of the quiz, very similar questions to that. Listen, if anybody's staying for the quiz tonight, wear your armour. It's a very, very challenging quiz. It'll be tough for you to navigate tonight. I am kind of going into this thing realizing just how knowledgeable you are. And we have to make it so that the quiz at the end is always one of these things that if you do genuinely get a 10 out of 10, it's a hard fought thing, or you've managed to do it together as a community. And So the questions tonight might be a wee bit tricky. If you don't enjoy it, now you want me to back off a wee bit, you'll get that message across, I don't doubt. All right, let's move on to my surprises. How are we doing for time? It's the vPub. We're doing fine for time. Surprises. Surprises that make me happy. Happy dram surprises. That's what I'm talking about tonight. So I'm going to share with you a couple of whiskies. I'll finish out with a big peat bomb. This really, I found really endearing. And I'm going to share with you something else that I find worthy to talk about. And then I'm going to finish with the dram I started with and share that with you tonight as well. All of these things make me very, very happy. I started tonight talking about, I think, what is a huge misstep, a stupid move from Ardbeg to put out such a cynical product, to dress it up as something for the fans, bringing back something from the past, and yet charging us through the nose for it, or attempting to charge us through the nose for it. I think it's poor. And to show you how poor it is, if you want 17-year-old Islay malt, and you don't want to sip it diluted down to 40%, and you don't want to pay £160, here's something that is absolutely gorgeous. I'm on my second bottle of this now. Please focus on this because everyone needs to see it. I think I shared it maybe over winter time. This is Port Askig's 17-year-old. This is not cask strength. This is 50.5% ABV. I think that's a specified strength, but it's much higher ABV than the Ardbeg. Same age statement. Gorgeous, light, yet potent and bold and fantastic, well-balanced, super peaty Islay whiskey, 17 years old, 120 quid, 125, depending on where you pick it up from. Fully natural, much better quality, much better presentation, and a full, you know, you could buy most of the bottles I've been speaking about tonight in addition to this, compared to what Ardbeg want to charge you for a diluted 17-year-old Islay. However, there's something that's much more widely available. It doesn't have an age statement on it. And I've sipped it now alongside Lagavulin 12-year-old cask strength. I still have some on the shelf. I've sipped it alongside this Port Askig 17-year-old at 50.5% ABV. And it's different. It does stand out. And if you want to pick out what makes this whiskey different, do that. Sip it in contrast, because sipping it in isolation, they taste very similar. But this has surprised me. This is a bloody good whiskey, and it tells me another thing that's making me happy about single malt Scotch whiskey. That these new distilleries, like I've mentioned Ardnamurchan already, but Kilchoman's been on the go for almost 20 years now. 2005, this wee company came along. Now, there's not a lot of stock from back then in the early days. And when they do bring out the older stuff, 16 years old at £204, anyone? Nonsense, far too expensive, a misstep in my mind. It's sold out regardless. Whether that tarnishes them long term, I don't know. But I'm going to step up here and say, okay, that was a misstep. But their Sanic is fantastic. Their Machir Bay is the best it's ever been. Kilchoman are bringing fantastic stuff. This is their batch strength. This is 57% ABV Kilchoman. A wee bit expensive. It's 75 quid. Then you sip it alongside the £155 Lagavulin 12. You sip it alongside the £122 Port Askig 17, and you realise that, okay, we understand. If we want the delicacy, if we want the maturity, if we want the softness that comes with older Islay malt, like the Port Askig, we've got that there for 120. We're not touching Lagavulin 12 anymore. It's long gone. £155 for a 12-year-old is just greed. It's just simple greed. It's arbitrary pricing from thin air. Kilchoman have pitched it higher than I would comfortably like to see them. This should be £65. But I suspect that it's one of these whiskies that there isn't millions of it around. It's big on the nose. It's very Kilchoman. It's slightly more ashy than typical Kilchoman peat to my nose tonight. There's a kind of richness and a softness and a greenness and a kind of silagey, farmy side to Kilchoman's peat. But this is kind of clean and ashen. This is creamy peat. So big, so round, so ripe, so fruity, farmy, malty, grainy, yes, but there's gorgeous sweet apple there. Citrus rind, drying grapefruit, gorgeous, gorgeous smoke and ash, a minerally lick right through the middle, a through line of a gorgeous kind of salinity, beachy, mineralic note. And it's all kind of bound together with this gorgeous, weighty, oily creaminess. This is like no Kilchoman I've been able to drink at this price point. I got a generous sample of this from the community. I got a generous sample from Melanie from the Glasgow Whisky Club. How many more samples am I going to need to have before I realise that I should just go out and pick up a bottle of this and enjoy it and pour it for my pals that come round and love the PT whiskey? 57% ABV batch strength Kilchoman. They're not putting cask strength on there. They're putting out there a batch strength product. This is going to be a core range. 57% ABV regular. Fully natural. It's got a gorgeous rich colour to it as well. For all the steps that Kilchoman have taken in recent times, it's kind of annoyed me a wee bit, that I've seen as a wee bit cynical. I have to keep reminding myself that for a lot of these releases that Kilchoman are putting out there, there's nothing left of it. It's gone. At Kilchoman for years, we're always selling what they had in order to keep going. It meant that they didn't ever have a lot left in backup. That's changed now. Expansion after expansion after expansion continues to happen. They're in a situation now where they've got huge investment. That's going to be interesting to see what's happening there. They continue to expand. They're expanding on malt floor. They're expanding everything to try and keep up. But what you taste now, whether you drink Sanic or whether you drink Machir Bay, any other of their expressions or this batch strength, is something that we have not been able to sip until recent years with Kilchoman, and that is maturity. There is a sense of maturity. That raw, jagged elbow, rough, kind of malty, grainy, overly grainy side that they had, overly farmy side that they had at times, is very difficult to find now, in my opinion. Kilchoman have come of age. We are getting batch strength Kilchoman, freely available on the shelf, 57% ABV for about 70, 75 quid. Way less than half the price that Ardbeg want to charge us for something that's a bit more mature, but heavily stripped and diluted. These things make me happy. How are you getting on with Kilchoman's batch strength? Anybody tried it? Best Kilchoman we've had to date is their Madeira cask. Simply stunning. I love malt whiskey matured in Madeira. I've got a fetish for Madeira as well. We've talked about it in the past. Kilchoman's Madeira I didn't pick up. It passed me by. Maybe it's still out there. I'm not sure. I thought the Kilchoman cognac cask was really different, says Make a Dram Decision, from any other Kilchoman I have had aquavitae. I hope that means it was positive different. A dram's come in from Steve Wilson as well. I missed that one, Steve from Canada. No comment or anything. He's just buying me a wee dram. I'll raise a wee glass of this Kilchoman, Steve Wilson. Steve, I wonder, that can't be the first time I've welcomed you, is it? If it is, it's nice to have you, fella. Cheers to you. Graham Fraser is saying, just had an excellent dram of Bourbon Barrel Glentochers, 11-year-old from the Whiskey Barrel and a Blue Blazer in Edinburgh tonight. Been out in your travels, Graham. Hope you're enjoying yourself. You're on a train somewhere. Is that what's happening? And Ian Bruce is saying, I'm excited to see what Kilchoman do with the rum casks and whiskey when it's up and running in the future. That's right. They've got this rum project now, right? making rum. It's kind of an interesting direction there. I wonder what's going on there, but you never know. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. Do record. Mike is saying, I'm a man of my word. Just ordered the McDuff. I promise I'll be sharing it with Keith next time we're together. Well, you could have come over here and shared some of mine, fella. Bring that boy Keith with you. Anthony McGee is saying, pleased to join a live vPub at last. Thanks for sharing insight on the 18-year-olds. I'm hearing rumours about a return of Aaron 18. I wonder how much it will be. Well, the 17-year-old went out about 120 quid or something like that, didn't it? 115. I would suspect that it's going to kind of continue up along that path. It could be that an 18-year-old just goes out of reach, Anthony. But I'm happy to have you here. Nice to welcome you in, Anthony. Okay, let's finish off. I'm going to drink this wee one through the quiz tonight. I had a flight, as I said to you, on Tuesday night when I was picking up my last bottle pick. Some bottles have been left out tonight. You know, I just couldn't go through. I've gone through a lot of bottles tonight. I've gone through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 bottles I've shared with you tonight, and I'm about to share with you a 9th. So I had to keep it in single digits, didn't I? So I was sipping through a couple on Tuesday night to work out, are they really magical? Do they make me happy? Are they good value? All of these things. The last one I had was that Kilchoman. And I said, I know it's 75 quid, but it's going in here. I'm happy to have this Kilchoman. I think it's a cracking Islay malt whiskey for the price. And then the one I enjoyed most out of the lineup, the one that had surprised me the most, I poured another dram of it, just to see how it was after the flight. It's been sitting in a glass since we started tonight. It's like I've started to look for this in the dram now, but it's very, very honey. But there's more to it than that. There's lots of stone fruit to it. It's a pecan thing, pecan pie, a baked goods, a patisserie type thing. Let's have a wee sip, because on Tuesday night after that lineup, the sip of this whiskey that I thought was light cut right through everything, even the heavily peated Kilchoman I just sipped. Let's see if the same thing happens tonight. If it doesn't happen tonight, I'll try and tell you and be honest with you rather than just say that it is. So much of the enjoyment of whiskey is in the texture. There's a density to this that betrays everything that this whiskey is on paper. No, it doesn't betray. It defies everything that it is on paper. To defy it is the right word. There's a concentration, a density. I don't know how to describe it. The best way I can describe this is, imagine that you're expecting something to be light, bright, and refreshing, and you're given something that just coats every part of your palate and hangs around with a finish that is so ridiculously long that it beggars belief, given what you believe you bought. This is 45.3% ABV. I believe it to be all natural. This has an 8-year age statement on the label. It cost £48. I've bought more than one bottle of it now. It is probably the highlight of my summer. I'm on my second bottle now. I was drinking it against lots of different things and enjoying it and everything that you sip it. Listen, I don't like a honey forward profile typically, but that's not to say I don't enjoy it. This probably has a honey forward profile because there's honeycomb on the label as well. I'm noticing now. It definitely does. However, there is so much more going on in this that this has just been my happy whiskey of this summer. This is an independent bottling. I'm sorry to say, I'm going to try it and close the cork on it. But I know how hard it's going to be to get the thing out again. This is an independent bottling, but it is still available here and there. You might need to search for it now. Go into your local retailer. I bet you they've maybe got some on the shelves. I hope they're going to charge you less than 50 quid for it. This is a blended whiskey. This is Little Brown Dog's Drookit Dug. Now, Little Brown Dog is a fantastic independent bottler, always putting great stuff out there on the market. And these bottles, they look like they're 50 cl bottles, but they are 70 cl. 45.3% ABV. Interestingly, that they put on this, they call it a cask strength session dram. That's two very, very interesting things to be together there, right? Cask strength, so that means that 45.3% has been arrived at naturally. There's nothing been added, no water has been added to that to dilute it. So the ABV, the strength of this whiskey is natural cask strength. So it's arrived at that 45.3 in natural ways, which means the flavors are all intact and much more concentrated. It's quite an interesting thing to consider and to talk about and to enjoy. This is one of Scotty Munro's favorite drams. If Scotty loves a dram and he's raving about it, I tend to pay attention. I had this sitting on the side. I had Scotty raving about it, a few other people raving about it. The first bottle I bought, I paid less than £48 for it. The second bottle was 48 quid. Just a delight, an absolute delight. And the reason that this is a surprise to me, we're enjoying McLean's Nose. We're loving Thompson Brothers TBBSW. We're loving what's coming out of Turntable. We're loving all of these things and realizing, are we becoming comfortable with blended Scotch? Are we getting to the point that we realize that the way that we have become a bit of a snob or a bit tainted about blends is because not who we are, but how blends have treated us over the years. And these newer blends are coming along and teaching us that it doesn't have to be that way. I had a wee look at the website for this whiskey, and they make a joke about the cork, and it really resonated with me because both bottles that I've opened took a lot of effort to get into, and it's one of these synthetic corks. That's not what it's about, though. Both of mine have had spinning tops, which meant you're turning and turning and turning and nothing's happening. Eventually, it's just brute force to get it out, and then to try and get it back in again, you can put it back in again. You give it a dun, it goes back in. Then you've got the same process to go through to get it out again, and they actually make light of that on their website. It's difficult for me to convey the pleasure I'm getting out of this whiskey, but it has to do, I think, with the fact that this is a very high malt content blend. There are much more. They've put an 8-year age statement on this, but there is clearly, demonstrably much more mature stock in this. You taste it. You absolutely taste it. How much is more mature? I don't know, and I don't really care. Because for £48, if somebody said, Roy, I've got 50 quid to buy a bottle of whiskey, what can I, and this was available, this is it. This has been the whiskey this summer that made me happy. The price, the flavor, the density, the texture, the difference of it, and the fact it was £48. There are people out there that want to abuse the fact that you're brand loyal. There are people out there that want to overreach when it comes to what they believe their brand value is worth. It's not exclusive to whiskey. It's everywhere and everything that we touch and do. Clothes that we wear, watches that we buy, cars that we drive, places we eat. It's everywhere. We have to be promiscuous. We have to be fickle. We have to follow our gut. We have to stop and recognize and pause in the moments where we find ourselves happy. All of the whiskies I've shared with you tonight has done that very thing for me. Even through summer, when I sip far less whiskies, I've been picking these things up. I've been looking at these concepts. I've been looking at these things. that fly in the face of these other dynamics that make us grumpy and unhappy about whisky. Our hobby is safe. It's in good hands. I think it's a wee bit of a shame that, with a few exceptions that I've shared with you tonight and some more, but generally speaking, it's the independent producers, the independent bottlers, it's the independent distillers, it's the independent thinkers, it's the people that have ethics, and it's the people that are passionate about whisky that are bringing the best stuff. The rest of it is becoming a wee bit second best. Here's to Renaissance. Here's to new things. Here's to new flavors. Here's to surprises. And here, more than anything, is to good value. All of these things will keep us happy. Brian, my pal Brian, going through a wee struggle. He's going through, it's now Kilchoman mental musings. Remember, 54 months, where does the time go? 54 months, Brian, you've been here that long. Fantastic. You put the wee fantastic icon in there as well. Here, I'm raising a glass to you for 54 months, for your support, for our friendship, and for your new ventures. And a glass to your health as well, my friend. Cheers to you. And a dram from John Ferguson. Now, here's an interesting story. John, I think that's you. Some great drams hidden inside those independent bottles. I was in Fresco, Texas, with Scott from the Scotch Test Dummies. We were driving down and we stopped in one of these big liquor stores. I don't know if it was a Specs. I'm not sure. But we're in one of these big liquor stores and we're just standing there, and there was a fella there started to chat to us. And we had the sense that he vaguely recognised us. And he didn't chat to us for a wee while. And more recently, he's come on and he's a patron now. So over a year ago, we bumped into John in Fresco, and now he's in as a patron, a supporter, and he's buying me a dram in the chat as well. I love the scale of this community. I love the reach. I love how we're all over the world, but we only bump into each other in kind of these whiskey spaces. And it just means that all these little kind of neurons are getting connected, right? It's just fantastic to see. Cheers, John, and cheers, Brian. That's me sipping the Macduff. Super rich. Okay, everyone, there we go with the surprises. I hope I summarised that. I hope I kept things mostly positive tonight. I hope you enjoyed tonight. I hope that maybe you're going to be in a comfortable position when you see some of these labels and things like that. You're able to spot it and just pick them up blind on trust. On the basis that I've bought these with my own money, and I speak about them in an evangelical way because I truly love them, because they make me happy. And it would be good if they made you happy too. Steve Wilson is saying, Aquaviti, so much great whiskey presented today. Wish I could get my hands on half of these great affordable drams, Steve, and I wish that they could make themselves forward to you. Certainly the dynamics and the will and the impetus that's creating these things, I hope helps whiskies like this get to you and get to you soon. Come to Scotland, otherwise. You'll be able to pick up some of it here. There is a quiz tonight. There's a killer of a quiz tonight, a challenging quiz tonight, a good fun quiz tonight. I don't know. But I know it's challenging because I started to do it earlier in the week and I finished it this morning. Out to do another, come in to set up tonight, ran through the questions and went, oh my goodness, I've put together a tricky quiz tonight. I've been nice to you in some areas and I've been horrible in others. But let's just roll with it. It's the quiz at the end and it's how it's always meant to be. If you're struggling, help. Other people are there in the chat to help you, and then maybe if you're doing quite well, then you're in a position that you can help other people, and you work as a community to get through the questions and avoid the banana skins and asshats in order to try and make it through to get a 10 out of 10. If anyone gets a 10 out of 10 tonight, my goodness, it'll be very, very well deserved. It's not quite Menno level brutality, but it's quite a tricky wee quiz. Lowlander is saying, killer quiz in the words of Duncan Ballantyne. I'm out. I don't believe you for a second, Lowlander. You'll be here with bells on right till the end. Even Roy with the Oasis pun. Did I have an Oasis pun there? Ian Bruce, I'm not even aware that I made a pun at all. Not even aware. Okay, let's bring us in to the quiz at the end. Good luck, everyone. You know the rules here. Pass mark is typically a 5 out of 10. You don't need to share your score if you don't want to. It's all multiple choice and you're only playing against yourself. Michael Wood likes to play against him and his chimpanzee. So the theory is that even a chimpanzee can score 3 out of 10, right? But sometimes he is outdone by his chimpanzee. We can all play that wee game. You can do it by just writing down 10 random ABCs and see how your kind of random alter ego gets on with the quiz at the end, and then see how knowledgeable you are with the actual questions. Mike is saying, bring it on, Aquavite. Hard quizzes equals learning. You would think, but I make a lot of those quizzes and I wonder what I'm learning, Mike. Good luck, everyone. All the best. Question 1. As the year 2000 came around, there were only 5 Islay distilleries that were close to full-time production. Just 24 years ago, 25 years ago, only 5 of them were close to full-time production. Which of these were silent? A, Kilchoman was silent, B, Bruichladdich was silent, or C, Bunnahabhain was silent. So as the year 1999 clipped into the year 2000, which of these distilleries were silent while the other 5 were busy? Legal questions only, Roy, says Rolfie. I like the bravery, big guy. Let's see how you get on. Wow. Trevor Hedge. That's the first time I've welcomed you in, Trevor. Roy, you forgot to mention the affordable Glenfiddich Grand Chateau. You know, Trevor, I would love, love, love to have an accessible, good quality banger of a Glenfiddich to celebrate. I would shout about it from the rooftops. Fantastic place to visit, fantastic distillery, fantastic malt whiskey. Can't buy a bottle of it that's representative at all. Still got a wee bit of a love and desire for the 12-year-old. I've always got Glenfiddich 12 on the shelf. Okay, how many of these were silent? Most of you are going for Bruichladdich B. Obviously, you've seen the movie, you've seen the Water of Life movie, you've seen all of that, but I can tell you you're correct. Bruichladdich and Bunnahabhain is 1989, clicked into 2000. They were both silent, but of course, Kilchoman didn't exist. So you might argue that Kilchoman was also silent. And if that's the case, absolutely, you'd be right. Certainly, there was no Kilchoman malt or Bruichladdich malt or Bunnahabhain malt being made as it clicked into the year 2000. Which of these Speyside distilleries declare themselves as a Highland single malt on their label? Which of these Speyside distilleries declare themselves as a Highland single malt on their label? A, Knockdhu, which is branded Annoch, of course. B, Craigellachie, or C, Dalwhinnie. Lowlander is saying, how can it be silent when it didn't exist? Because it's not loud, Lowlander. Like I say, I left it there blank. I left it without a tick, but it's the first question. Nobody goes home with a donut tonight. So if somebody mentioned Kilchoman or went for Kilchoman, then of course it was silent. It didn't even exist yet. It was just a pipe dream. It was just a note in somebody's future plans. Which of these Speyside distilleries declare themselves as a Highland on the label? Knockdhu, which is Annoch, of course, Craigellachie or Dalwhinnie. I heard this story firsthand, is saying Rolfie, and he's answered A, I believe. He did. I can tell you that Rolfie is absolutely correct. The reason I've hesitated here is that the only clear, genuine Speyside is Craigellachie, and they do call themselves Craigellachie on their labels. They don't say Highland, they say Speyside. Sorry, they call themselves Speyside on the label. Dalwhinnie, depending on who you speak to, is either a Highland or a Speyside, and the same goes for Knockdhu. However, it's the Malt Whisky Yearbook that we follow for the quiz at the end. They define both of them as Speysiders, and we follow that. So if you answered Knockdhu, if you answered Dalwhinnie, you're correct. If you answered Craigellachie, you'd be wrong because nothing to do with the region or Highland or Speyside. they put Speyside on the label. Question 3. As you pick up a rental car at Glasgow Airport and head up to the nearest visitor centre, which of these is the shortest drive? So we're talking about a drive from Glasgow Airport to the nearest visitor centre. Would it be A, Glengoyne in the Southern Highlands, B, Deanston in the Southern Highlands, or C, Loch Lomond in the Southern Highlands? Which of those distilleries would be the shortest drive from Glasgow Airport? You're picking up a rental car at Glasgow and you're going to the nearest distillery visitor centre. Which of those is the shortest drive? Can I say that if you are intending to visit a distillery and visit a distillery properly, if you have to drive there, yes, drive there. But if there's any way you can be driven or you can make arrangements that you don't have to drive, that's the way to do it. Scotland, drinking and driving is not tolerated at any level. Your Uncle Vanya, spot on. She's saying which season. Right enough. Okay. The nearest is Loch Lomond. But Loch Lomond does not have a visitor centre. So that's why the banana skin's there. Glengoyne is the nearest. About 40 miles to Deanston, about 20 miles to Glengoyne, about 19 miles to Loch Lomond. But as I say, they do not have a visitor centre. So Glengoyne there, so you had to answer A, like most of you did. Superb to see it. Fantastic. Love it. Question 4. Which distillery lists its address as Well Close? Well Close is the address for which distillery? Is it A, Pulteney in the Northern Highlands, B, Springbank in Campbelltown, or C, Oban in the Western Highlands? Which of those distilleries lists its address as Well Close? Pulteney, Springbank, or Oban? Just remind everyone that the Roddy vPub is finally happening next week. If you're looking forward to seeing Roddy back in, you know how to use the emojis. And I hope when he's here next week, you fill the chat full of them. It's been a wee while since we've had the man on, but he's joining us next week, and we're both tinkering in the backgrounds. We'll try and put together some samples and hand some samples out so that people that we can put samples directly in the hands of can participate and play along. Brian Cabayas is saying goodbye. He's got to go back to work. He's saying, I'm leaving the quiz for work. Have a great evening, Barflies. Brian, so good to have you join us tonight. Nice. I hope you don't have to work too hard, buddy, and I look forward to seeing you next week. Bruce Bernard is in answering a B. Good to see you, Bruce. Nicholas is here. Jim is here. Jim Morse, I think it's Jim Morse. Hoyt, Frank Peterhead is in as well. I saw you in earlier, Frank. I can't believe it's the first time I'm mentioning that you're here. Lachlan McKenzie is here. Steve Atkiss, Fernando, James Morgan, all the familiar faces at the end. Hell's Wind celebrating, fantastic. And Roddy. You can tell everyone that Well Close is actually the address of Springbank. Springbank Distillery. So if you've ever been in Campbelltown, or if you've ever turned up the street and walked up that narrow lane to get to the distillery, that narrow lane is called Well Close. Question 5 is an interesting one. Hoyt, Hell's Wood, still hanging on to a 4 out of 4. Quite a few of you. Nicholas, Bruce Bernard, fantastic. Tim, Dorpass Whiskey, Sugar Kitty, Rolfie saying it's too much. Pedro Menezes on a 4 out of 4. Tony Nelson on a 4 out of 4. Pedro, Tony, fantastic. Good to see you, Tony. Glenn FC, Klaus is on a 4 out of 4. Glenn, that might be the first time I've welcomed you here. Good to have you, buddy, and congrats on the score. Have a look at this image. This is an AI generated image. I generated this earlier today to have fun, but the center, the stillhouse glazing here that you see, the lights and the doors, the gable end, the pointy roof, that is real. It's a cropped image, and I've extended it, and it's AI. The rest of it is AI, and I'm just going to ask you, what is the original center image based on? This is an AI image generated from which distillery? A, Dalmunnock in Speyside, B, Ardnahoe on Islay, or C, Ardnamurchan in the Western Highlands. This is AI generated image we've got here, but the center section here is legitimate. So what you need to focus on here is the glazing over the stillhouse, the doors, the gable end. I would suggest there seems to be a blackening from that aspergillus fungus that feeds off the alcohol around the distilleries. So it's been around for long enough to generate some of that, but do not take anything from the buildings around it whatsoever. Kyle Taylor is saying, we wrong you all. Pedro is saying, no idea at all, just going with A with the barflies. One Glassman is saying, shape of an A. It is the shape of an A. A by popular vote. AI, BI, or CI isn't a thing, so A. Oh, wow. Wow, wow, wow. We are looking at Ardnamurchan. So as you can see here, I cropped the image of the still house and asked AI to generate everything around it. And this is what they put together. This is what AI put together. It was based on Ardnamurchan. I can see a new way for the picture question to go in the end. Thanks to Graham Fraser for the original image. What this means, if I take Graham Fraser's images and I generate AI images from Graham Fraser's images, it means that he can play the quiz fully and he doesn't need to say 9 out of 9 or something. He can actually claim a proper 10 out of 10. Never believe AI anymore. You shouldn't have been believing it anyway. My goodness, AI, it's crazy. That's mean aquavite. 4 out of 5, says Pedro. But look how clear it is now that you see that stillhouse there, right? You can see it's Ardnamurchan. I accept that, Pedro. It is a wee bit mean. Question 6 is not going to be any less mean. Which of these is a genuine distillery located in the USA? Looking for genuine distillery here. A, Dirty Water Distillery. B, Raging Bear Distillery. C, Dogfish Head Distillery. I call a vote on ethics, says James Morgan. I think it's brilliant that we have been able to use the quiz at the end, James, to bring up such a concept, talking about ethics of the quiz. I think it's brilliant, using AI specifically. Let's go back to this wee. Oh no, I think that's the wireworks. All over the place with this one. People going for, the majority going for the Dogfish Head Distillery. Great Bears 2, by the way, says Pedro. Love the name, says Ebhead. Well, I can tell you, I thought tonight's theme was positivity and fun. Bring back Menno, says Julian Rickman. Well, hopefully that you're positively having fun by getting beaten up. I know. I can tell you that Dirty Water Distillery is real, as is Dogfish Head Distillery. Raging Bear Distillery I made up. But if you answered A for Dirty Water or C for Dogfish Head, they are both legitimate American malt distilleries, or at least distilleries in America that make malt. Tony Nelson on a 6 out of 6. Wow. 4 for Lachlan. Helen on 5. Desi is in. Good to see you, Desi. And she's on a 4. Bruce Bernard on a 5. Hellswood on 5. Gene Kelly 4. Ginger Genius 3. Ian Bruce 5. Any other 5s? Tony Nelson I'm spotting on a 6. looking for the sixes. Oh, Graham Fraser holding it together on a 6 out of 6. Well done, Graham. Well done. And you're playing fully tonight. Question 7 in 2020. Kilchoman released an expression named by the distillery manager Isla Heads, and he called it amburach. What does this mean in English? What does amburach mean in English? Does it mean A, a pinnacle, B, a mess, C, a foundation? What does Kilchoman's amburach mean in English? Whiskey Slayer is saying, we just got 2 little brown dogs after your recommendation, Roy, for £72 with a discount from Royal Mill Whiskies. Then saw a Lagavulin 1833 with my discount. Cheers, Roy. Look forward to try the little brown dog. Whiskey Slayer, I tell you what, if you open that and you're disappointed in it, I'll take at least one of the bottles off you. I think it's just a cracking little unique blended bottle of whiskey. Glad you were able to find it out there. Raging Bear sounds cool. Just as it jumped, didn't see who caught it. Mike Molasses is saying B, a mess, much like my performance on this quiz. Most of you are answering B, and indeed, Isla Heads called it after a Stillman mistakenly mixed some, I think it was port. From memory, I think it was port matured stock with the standard Mahir Bay stock. He called it a mess. Amburach. It was a mess. 2020 release. Question 8. It's part of a massive expansion and refurbishment at Dalmore. What will they build on top of their now demolished Saladin maltings? What's Dalmore going to build on top of the buildings that were destroyed that used to house their Saladin maltings? Will they build another still house? B, a shiny new visitor centre? Or C, 3 new dunnage warehouses? What will Dalmore be building on the buildings that they destroyed that used to house their Saladin maltings? Another still house, a new visitor centre, or 3 new warehouses? Pete Dead is saying, I guess dark paint. Cynicism. Graham Fraser on a 7 out of 7. Is Tony Nelson still holding it together? Did he get through that last one? Pedro, Donner Pass Whiskey, Ian Bruce, Bruce Bernard, Chris Pollock. Tony Nelson is still on 7 out of 7, but all the other names I read out there on a 6. Still great scores. Given how brutal a quiz this is, the scoring is ridiculous. So many of you celebrating your pass marks already. Lassie Hort Otsman, good to see you, Lassie. Overland Drams on a 6. Terrific score. Taylor actually just in, participating on a 2 out of 2. Terrific to see you, Taylor. Everyone guessing on this one, given their nature, must be B. Guess B, but he's hoping for C. What's actually happening is the expansion at Dalmore. They're building an entire new distillery. They're doing a Macallan. Different from Macallan, though. Once the new distillery is up and running, they're going to go back and refurbish the old distillery and run both of them at the same time as one distillery. So they are building, on top of the buildings that used to house their maltings, they're building an entire new still house. I don't know what stage they're at, what progress they're at. The only news that I could find, generally speaking, still talked about it as a project. So I don't know how much construction is actually happening up there at Dalmore. It's going to be hugely disruptive, I imagine, but they are building a whole new distillery. Question 9, second from last. Jimmy Jazz is saying, well done, Dalmore, now 5 out of 8. Mike Molasses is saying 4 out of 8. I'm not going to get a pass mark, am I? Come on, Mike. Come on. This is a terrible quiz. TVR systems are being fitted to distilleries throughout Scotland to reduce their environmental impact. Where are these typically fitted? If it helps you, I'll tell you that TVR, from memory, is thermal vapor recompression systems, I think. Thermal vapor recompression systems. I don't have to know anything about it in order to put a quiz question together, do I? Andy Cross is here. Good to see Andy. Warner, one glass man. Who needs another Dalmore? Well, it's going to be the same Dalmore according to them, which is pretty much like Macallan. Build a brand new distillery, shut down the old one, and just keep it going like it's the same old Macallan, right? TVR systems are A, water boilers, B, used on effluent discharge systems, or C, used on pot stills typically. Where the TVR systems best reduce environmental, easy for me to say, impact from distilleries? Is it A, water boilers, B, effluent discharge systems, or C, pot stills? Oh my goodness, you say TVR, many of us think of the car. Absolutely, Taylor, you're spot on. I think of it too. I'm a car head as well. Wow. Wow, wow, wow. Wow. Clues in V for vapor. V for vapor. That's the clue here. Thermal vapor. Thermal vapor recompression. Bruce Bernard. Yes. Glenn Elves. Or Glenn FC. FC? Klaus. Fantastic. Sugar Kitty. Fantastic. Dave Swift. Well done. Ian Bruce. Hoyt. Fantastic. A thermal vapor recompression system is typically fitted to pot stills. Well done, everybody that answered C or changed to C. Feeling a wee bit guilty about how brutal this is. I want to hold the scores high. But Tony Nelson has slipped. He's on an 8 out of 9. I think we're down to Graham Fraser now to hold it together. He's saying C. I think that Graham's maybe the only one on a 9 out of 9. Let's see if anyone else is coming up. I think it is brutal. I think it really is. Gene Kelly's got a pass mark. He's saying embarrassingly, but he's got his pass mark. Nothing to be embarrassed about. DVDW saying Aquaviti, thanks for the free mark. It was guilt. There is an asshat at the end, and it is an asshat. Of course it is. Of course, it's the last question, designed to be specifically obtuse. Good luck, everyone. According to the official site, malts.com, how many official expressions of Lagavulin are available for you to buy today? Should you be inclined, which I suspect you're not. How many Lagavulins, official core range releases, special editions, whatever they may be, how many Lagavulins can you buy at malts.com today? Is it the same as the number of operational Scotch malt distilleries currently on Islay? Or is it the same as the number of operational Scotch malt distilleries beginning with the letter C? Or is it C, the same as the number of operational Scotch malt distilleries lying south of Glen Scotia? Brutal stuff. Brutal ass-hattery. Just when you think you've got it together, you've got a decent score on the go, maybe like Graham Fraser, hoping to hold it together for a 10 out of 10, but it's like the boss fight at the end. The thing that you've got to get past. It needs one of those 1 in 100 hits to manage. How many Lagavulins can you buy today? I've got very little to hold together here, says Mike Molasses. Ian Bruce is quite spot on the money, saying A, B, or C. One Glass Man is saying it should be A. And Ashbjorn LP, good to have you in, Ashbjorn, is answering C. Good God, is Graham Fraser. We are watching you, Graham. Where are you going to jump on this? A, B, or C, my friend? If you get it right, it's a proper victory because it's a brutal, brutal quiz. Fernando's guessing C, and Dudercourt is saying surely it's not as low as A, going for C. Lachlan McKenzie is saying a B, but he's admitting that he's guessing. Taylor actually is saying a pure guess on C, along with Glenn B, going for C. Glenn B. I think I recognise you. Did we have a chat recently, Glenn? Nice to have you in. Overland Drams on B. Chris Pollack on C. B is for B, says Overland Drams. I'm still waiting on Graham Fraser. He's got to put his answer in and then they'll reveal. Come on, big guy. We're all behind you for a 10 out of 10. A, pure guess A. So Graham's suggesting that it's the amount of Lagavulins that you can buy at malts.com today. And I fully trust that nobody's gone off and checking malts.com and counting them, because it's such a fiddly, difficult site to use that it's very, very tricky to do. But he's saying it's the same as the amount of distilleries currently on Islay. Okay, let's reveal. On Islay, there are 10 currently operational malt distilleries. Beginning with the letter C, we have 7 currently operational malt distilleries. And also, lying south of Glen Scotia, we have 7 currently operational malt distilleries. So actually, if Graham had said B or C tonight, he would have got it correct. If you go to the malts.com website, there are 7 different expressions of Lagavulin. The 16, of course, Distillers Edition. They've then got the 2021, the 2022, the 2023, 12-year-old. They've got a jazz festival bottling there. They've got other things. They've got 7 different expressions. Brutal, brutal, brutal. I'm not even going to keep that 10 up, because my pal Graham, the man who gives us so much knowledge, shares so much information, brings so many people together, donates images for the quiz at the end, and just a general all-round whiskey superhero. I go and rip the carpet right out from under his feet at the end. I hoped with a 2 out of 3 opportunity at the end he might have a chance, but I think I've stolen it from him. And for that, I feel a wee bit bad. It does not make me happy. I like it when people do well out of the quiz, but the quiz has to be something that's challenging. It has to be something that's a fight. I have still not scored 10 out of 10 on a quiz at the end. I'm not bitter. I'm not trying to stop you from scoring 10 out of 10, but it has to remain something that when I do score 10 out of 10, I literally feel very, very happy. Overland Drams is saying, well done, fun quiz. Drookit is saying, well, we are sure you're not a distant cousin of Menno. Are you sure you're not a distant cousin of Menno? Let's say if we come together next week, I will attempt to make things a wee bit more palatable and attainable, but it's nice to switch it up from time to time, isn't it? Peter is saying, with that, I call it a day and going to hit the sack. Thanks as always for organising Aquavitae, and to all of you, see you next time, Slanjuva, and I'll see you, Frank, at the end of the month. I'm looking forward to seeing you again, big guy. Always love seeing your happy face. Ginger Genius is saying, a happy vPub with a sad quiz. That's right, Ginger Genius. And Chris Pollack is saying, love the session, thanks. Any ambitions for a recycled review? Yes, I was supposed to get one done over summer. There's so many projects on the go, so many spinning plates. I've got the bottles to do the recycled review, no question. It's just a case of getting some time and motivation to do it. So I should maybe try and get there soon, but I will get to it at some point. Hillswood is saying, a fine laid back solo session this evening at Aquavitae at the end of September. Thank you for suggesting it's laid back when you're maybe raging at the quiz. And Lolander is saying, thanks for another great vPub. Shame about the quiz. Night all, says Dave Swift. Loved being in live. The 10 remains elusive. Dave, we'll see you. Safe travels, and we'll see you Scotland side soon. Coming all the way from New Zealand. Molasses Mike is saying, great vPub, excruciating quiz. Love you anyway. Thank you, Mike. Thank you so much. Thank you, buddy. Pedro is saying, great vPub as always. Aquavitae, wishing you all a great weekend. And Tim Dorpass Whiskey is saying, Aquavitae lock-in. I'm hoping that there might be a chance to do a lock-in on Sunday night. Lock-ins just for patrons. I usually try and give patrons a wee bit more notice, but we've got some friends arriving. The Whiskey Rev and his family's coming here this weekend, and just kind of wondering what the shape of the weekend's going to be. I didn't want to commit to something and then have to pull a parachute and everyone. So there might be a short notice vPub on Sunday, and if that's the case, I'll bring another one sooner. Just follow me in Patreon. Sunday night lock-ins are things that I do for patrons only. Anyway, thank you so much. Thanks to everyone. I'm going to do what I always do and raise a wee glass and say thank you all and remind you all that you're very, very dearly loved. But let's remind each other as well that this thing, this hobby, this thing that we chase is always supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be something that we love, and we're here because we love the thing, we like the way it makes us feel. And hopefully that is occasionally, mostly, especially if we try hard, it makes us happy. Until next week, everyone, Slanjava.